Hello everyone. Welcome to Frightening Tales. I know many of you enjoy listening to these videos as you fall asleep. So, before you drift off, I'd love for you to leave a comment letting me know where in the world you're tuning in from. And, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Alright, now let's get comfortable, relax, and dive into tonight's case. Story 1. In the history of the Joseon dynasty, a prominent figure named Hong Gildong stands out. He was a renowned thief during the reign of the infamous tyrant Yin Sangan. Later, literary works portray him as a legendary character with exceptional martial arts skills and extraordinary intelligence. Brave and clever, he always aided the weak and fought for justice, becoming a revered folk hero. In modern-day South Korea, a similar figure emerged. This individual successfully escaped from prison multiple times and evaded police pursuit. He stole from the rich to help the poor, supported marginalized communities, and earned the nickname the saintly thief of his era. That person is Shin Chong-won. In the history of the Joseon dynasty, a prominent figure named Hong Gildong stands out. He was a renowned thief during the reign of the infamous tyrant Yin Sang. Later, literary works portray him as a legendary character with exceptional martial arts skills and extraordinary intelligence. Brave and clever, he always aided the weak and fought for justice, becoming a revered folk hero. In modern-day South Korea, a similar figure emerged. This individual successfully escaped from prison multiple times and evaded police pursuit. He stole from the rich to help the poor, supported marginalized communities, and earned the nickname the saintly thief of his era. That person is Shin Chong-shin. Chong-won was born on May 28, 1967 into a poor farming family in Gimjae, North Jeolla Province, South Korea. He had an older sister and two older brothers. Chong-won's childhood was marked by hardship. His mother passed away from liver cancer when he was still in elementary school. His father later remarried and they had another son, bringing the family to a total of 7 members. They lived in poverty with a father who was frequently drunk, short-tempered and physically abusive, adding layers of trauma to Shin Chong-w's already difficult youth. During his school years, Shin Chong-won struggled academically. Although South Korea had implemented mandatory free education, many schools still collected fees under the guise of donations. Shin Chong-won's impoverished family couldn't afford these costs, leading to constant ridicule and humiliation from his peers and teachers. The pressure from both family and school left him disillusioned, gradually turning him into a rebellious and wayward child. At the age of 15, Shin Chong-won was arrested for the first time for stealing a watermelon. The person who reported him was none other than his own father. After the police notified his school, Shin Chong-won faced disciplinary action and was expelled. At the time, he had only been in middle school for 3 months. Still a minor, his father was given 2 options: take his son home, discipline him, and plead for the school to reinstate him, or send him to a juvenile detention center for others to reform him. Ultimately, Shin Chong-won chose to send him to the detention center despite objections from those around him. During his time in the juvenile detention center, Shin Chong-won neither learned any lessons nor recognized his mistakes. After his release, he became even more audacious, frequently getting arrested for theft and fighting His life soon became a cycle of crime and imprisonment. Later, he joined his accomplices in a heist, a decision that would irrevocably change the course of his life. In 1989, at the age of 22, Shin Chong-won was no longer satisfied with petty theft near his home. He and 4 friends from his village traveled to the capital, Seoul. There, the group of 5 robbed a stationery store. In the chaos, one of his accomplices attacked the store owner. A few days after the crime, 4 members of the group were arrested while Shin Chong-won became a wanted fugitive. Even while on the run, he sustained serious injuries. After 6 months of hiding, he was finally captured. During the trial, though he was not deemed the mastermind, the robbery resulted in a fatality and he was considered an accomplice. Ultimately, he was sentenced to life imprisonment and incarcerated at a prison in Seoul. After serving 5 years, Shin Chong-won was transferred to Bususan Prison, a facility in Bususan's Gangho district, specifically for dangerous criminals to continue his sentence. The prison, with a depth of 160 m, was heavily fortified with 4.5 m high concrete walls and a stringent security system, including 24/7 police surveillance. No one had ever successfully escaped from it before. Upon arrival, Shin Chong-won was placed in solitary confinement in cell number 26. The cell was sparsely furnished, with a bed near the door and a toilet inside. The rest of his life was confined within these 4 walls. Sometime later, Shin Chong-won discovered that the guards at the prison frequently used violence to discipline inmates. Under the brutal abuse of the guards, he began to harbor thoughts of escape. His years in prison had taught Shin Chong-won the art of observation. He seized every opportunity to study his surroundings and the guards' routines. Each night, lying on his bed, he mentally catalogued the resources available in the prison, searching for weaknesses. After a period of careful observation, he noticed a ventilation duct above the toilet in his cell, sealed with iron bars. If he could squeeze into the duct and navigate the pipes, it might lead him outside. From that moment, a plan to escape began to take shape in Shin Chong's mind. To avoid close monitoring, he made a concerted effort to behave well in prison, earning a reputation as a model inmate. During their sentences, all prisoners were required to perform community labor, with each assigned to different roles. Shin Chong-won was tasked with carpentry work, the first trade he learned in prison. Through his diligence and hard work, he gradually gained the trust of the prison authorities. Taking advantage of a moment when no one was paying attention, Shin Chong-won secretly took a small saw and hid it in the sole of his rubber shoe. In this way, he smuggled it back to his cell undetected. The ventilation duct in his cell was small, only 32 centimeters wide and 28 centimeters high, secured by 2 vertical iron bars, each 1.5 centimeters in diameter. Using a small saw to cut through the bars was a daunting task. Not to mention the noise of sawing metal could easily give him away. But Shin Chong-won had already devised a solution. Every evening from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. the prison broadcasted announcements and allowed the inmates a rare period of leisure time. Shin Chong-won used this window to mask the sound of his sawing. He worked methodically, sawing for just 20 minutes each day, never rushing. After each session, he carefully applied chewing gum to the grooves in the bars to conceal his progress. His caution was so meticulous that months passed without anyone noticing anything unusual. Even so, Shin Chongwan faced other challenges. Standing at 174 centimeters tall and weighing 80 kg, the ventilation duct was still too narrow for him to fit through, even without the bars. Undeterred, he persisted in sawing the bars daily while starting a strict diet to lose weight. Within 2 months, his weight dropped from 80 kilograms to 65 kilograms. After 4 months of persistence, his efforts at the ventilation duct paid off. Shin Chongwan had successfully cut through the 2 iron bars and slimmed down enough to fit. When he tested the duct, he was just able to squeeze through. Everything was now in place. All that remained was the right moment to act. However, the prison was under tight surveillance with guards stationed in watchtowers at all angles. Evading their scrutiny was no easy feat, but perhaps fate was on his side. At that time, Busuzan prison was preparing to build a chapel. The construction site became a blind spot for the guards, presenting a golden opportunity for Shin Chongw's escape plan. After 8 years of imprisonment, the day he had been waiting for finally arrived. On January 20, 1997, Shin Chongwan, then 29 years old, had meticulously prepared for his escape. As night fell, the prison's lights went out one by one, and the inmates gradually drifted into sleep. In his solitary cell, Shin Chongwan knew the moment had come. He quickly stood up, bent his knees, and covered himself with a blanket to create the illusion that he was asleep on the bed. Then he moved to the ventilation duct, removed the iron bars he had previously sawed, and took them along as tools. He swiftly squeezed himself into the ventilation duct. In the stillness of the late night, Shin Chongwan was tense. He could hear his own heartbeat and ragged breathing. Crawling through the duct in complete darkness, he tried to make no sound to avoid detection. One wrong move, and all his prior efforts would be in vain. After some time, he successfully reached the outer wall of the building. The vent on the wall was about 3.4 m above the ground, but Shin Chongwan no longer cared about the height. Gritting his teeth, he jumped down. After scanning the area to ensure no one was around, he dashed to the temporary construction site's outer wall. Using the saw and the 2 iron bars as tools, he frantically dug a hole through to the construction site. In the dead of night, the site was unmanned, allowing Shin Chongwan to carry out the rest of his escape plan unhindered. Having escaped his cell, Shin Chongwan climbed onto scaffolding and used a parachute cord from the construction site to scale the 4.5-meter high prison wall, successfully breaking out. The entire process unfolded with intense drama over the course of 90 minutes. After escaping, Shin Chongwan felt a brief sense of relief and began the next phase of his plan. Despite years in prison, theft remained second nature to him. Within just 500 meters, he stole some clothes, a small amount of money, and a bicycle. He rode the bicycle to central Busuzan, then made his way from there to the capital, Seoul. Fortunately, throughout the night, no one in the prison noticed his absence, giving Shin Chongwan precious time to flee. It wasn't until the next morning, during the prisoner roll call, that the guards discovered Shin Chongwan was missing from cell number 26. News of the breakout at Busuzan prison quickly spread through the media, capturing widespread attention in South Korea. Many citizens grew anxious for their safety and criticized the prison for its lax oversight. In truth, the prison had been negligent, but they never imagined Shin Chong-won would escape in such a manner. Upon arriving in Seoul, Shin Chong-won initially hoped to use the carpentry skills he had learned in prison to find legitimate work. However, wanted posters with his face were plastered everywhere, offering a reward of 5 million won, equivalent to over $3,600. At current exchange rates, this made it impossible for him to show his face, forcing him to continue surviving through theft. After some time, he decided to leave Seoul and flee to Cheonan in South Gyeongsang Province. One day, Shin Chong-won stopped by a local cafe in Cheonan that offered companionship services where staff would chat and play games with customers. There, he met Jim, a cafe employee. That day, Jim approached him and asked if he'd like to have coffee with her. Looking at the girl in front of him, Shin Chong-won asked if she was feeling okay, surprising Jim. No customer had ever shown concern for her well-being before. She admitted she had a cold. The two began chatting casually. After asking about her health, Shin Chong-won even went to a pharmacy to buy cold medicine for her. Touched by his kindness, Jim felt a connection and their relationship quickly grew close. After a few dates, the two fell in love. However, Jim had no idea that her boyfriend was a nationally wanted criminal. Eventually, Shin Chong-won confessed his true identity, sharing the painful experiences of his life on the run. Constantly moving with no stable place to call home, drifting from one place to another. Surprisingly, Jim was deeply empathetic toward Shin Chong-won and unbothered by his criminal status. She invited him to move into her home, and they began living together. Shin Chong-won even built a good rapport with the neighbors, often going fishing and hosting rooftop barbecues. It seemed as though he might have turned over a new leaf, but he continued to roam and make money through theft. 9 months after his escape, on a sunny day, Shin Chong-won visited a car wash he frequented to conceal his tattoos. Despite the hot weather, he wore a long-sleeved shirt and a vest. After the car wash, he was unusually generous, paying for the service and tipping each worker extra. This caught the attention of the car wash owner, who grew suspicious of Shin Chong's identity, and called a friend who was a police officer. Upon receiving the tip, the officer saw this as an opportunity to make a name for himself and quickly headed to the area Shin Chong-won was known to frequent. Following leads, the police found a photo studio Shin Chong-won had visited a few days earlier and obtained a picture of him. From this, they confirmed that the man was indeed the fugitive Shin Chong-won. The police then began investigating Shin Chong-won and his girlfriend's residence, a second-floor apartment in a complex. During their first visit, the apartment was dark and appeared empty. At that moment, Shin Chong-won was out committing a theft in the middle of the night. Despite the late hour, the police waited in the dimly lit hallway. Suddenly, footsteps echoed from the staircase, growing closer. The police quickly identified the approaching man as Shin Chong-won and fired a gas gun at him. Caught off guard, he was struck in the head and right eye. The weapon was designed to render a person unconscious, but Shin Chong-won's survival instinct was fierce. Summoning all his strength, he overcame the effects and escaped, disappearing into the vast darkness. From that encounter, a scar remained on his right eye. Following this incident, the police turned their attention to Jim, but she claimed innocence, insisting she knew nothing of Shin Chong-W's true identity. With no evidence against her, the police could do nothing. Afterward, Shin Chong-won and Jim risked maintaining secret contact. He decided to leave the city and asked Jim if she would join him in his nomadic life. This time, Jim's attitude shifted abruptly. She declared that she wasn't a criminal and shouldn't have to endure such hardship. In the end, despite their lingering feelings, they had no choice but to part ways. Later, Shin Chong-won called Jim, asking her to pack up his belongings. In the days following their breakup, he had already found a new girlfriend, a 21-year-old, younger than Jim, and moved in with her. At this point, Jim was still reeling from the heartbreak. She couldn't believe Shin Chong-won had moved on so quickly, as if he had a backup plan all along. The more she thought about it, the angrier she became, though. She suppressed her rage and agreed to his request. They arranged to meet at a parking lot in Chienan. That evening, Jim arrived early and waited. Soon after, Shin Chong-won appeared, slowly approaching her car. But an unexpected scene unfolded. From the back door of Jim's car, two police officers suddenly emerged, attempting to arrest him. Startled and panicked, Shin Chong-won realized Jim had betrayed him. Once again, he faced the police. But he was adept at escaping and not easily caught. After a fierce confrontation, one officer drew his gun to apprehend him, but the bullet jammed, giving Shin Chong-won an opening. He shoved the officers aside, jumped into the driver's seat of Jim's car, and drove off. Once more, Shin Chong-won slipped away right under the police's noses. In the car, Shin Chong-won left behind. Police discovered a large amount of cash, luxury watches, and jewelry from his thefts, items stolen from wealthy neighborhoods. They also found a wig, several stolen citizen ID cards, fake license plates, and a diary. The diary chronicled Shin Chong-W's activities after his escape, including multiple minor run-ins with police during his flight, such as driving a car with illegally tinted windows or smoking in a no-smoking area. Each time, he calmly presented an ID. But the police never thoroughly checked if the photo matched him. The diary also revealed that he had once hidden in a sewer system to evade the police. Following this lead, authorities conducted a massive sweep of the sewer systems in Gangnam and Mount Demo. But to no avail. The reward for Shin Chong-won's capture kept rising from 5 million won to 10 million won and eventually to 50 million won, the highest bounty ever offered by South Korean police for a fugitive. A massive force was deployed to apprehend him, even involving the military in the manhunt. During this time, Shin Chong-won committed numerous additional thefts, each time evading capture. This left the police humiliated and reprimanded for their ineffective efforts. Shin Chong-won, a lone fugitive, was single-handedly outsmarting the authorities. Despite their extensive resources, the police couldn't catch him. A police officer who once encountered Shin Chong-won noted his exceptional physical fitness and agility. Capable of navigating obstacles with ease during escapes, his skills rivaled those of professionally trained officers, and with each encounter, his experience grew. Additionally, Shin Chong-won had a strong mental resilience, remaining calm under pressure. He could survive in harsh conditions for extended periods. Sleeping under bridges, eating rats, yet still managed to elude capture. Not only that, Shin Chong-won was also a charmer. During his time on the run, he formed relationships with numerous women, most of whom were employees at restaurants or cafes, coming from ordinary family backgrounds. Many of them knew Shin Chong-w's true identity as a wanted criminal but chose not to report him to the police. Some even willingly helped him evade capture. The reason? Shin Chong-won treated them exceptionally well. He was generous, often buying them gifts and taking care of their needs with great attentiveness. Beyond his romantic partners, others whom Shin Chong-won had helped also secretly aided his escape. While on the run, Shin Chong-won committed over 100 thefts, amassing a fortune close to 10 billion won, equivalent to over 7.2 million US at current exchange rates. His victims were predominantly wealthy families. After stealing this money, he spent it lavishly to satisfy his material desires and to compensate for the deprivations of his childhood. However, in a surprising twist, Shin Chong-won did something that gradually shifted the perception of some media outlets and the public. He donated a portion of his stolen money to nursing homes, orphanages, churches, and other organizations to support those in need. Despite the risk of capture, he visited these places, spending time playing with children at orphanages. Only in those moments could Shin Chong-won relax, feeling free from the label of a criminal. According to media reports, Shin Chong-won's fame grew with each passing day. His reputation seemed to transform from that of an escaped convict to achieve a Laos hero helping the poor. Many people began to support him, with some young individuals idolizing him as a heroic figure more than just a common thief, a man of honor and justice. One interviewee even shared that their mother admired Shin Chong and hoped he would never be caught by the police. Some dubbed this phenomenon the Shin Chong-won syndrome. In South Korea, the relentless spread of this phenomenon turned the police into the losing side in the court of public opinion. This fueled their frustration and embarrassment, intensifying their determination to apprehend Shin Chong-won. In one instance, a police officer eager to make a quick arrest resorted to illegally using violence against one of Shin Chong-w's lovers. When the incident came to light, the officer was sacked. Later, a civilian reported spotting Shin Chong-won, prompting a police investigation. It turned out the individual wasn't him at all. Nevertheless, the civilian insisted they deserved the reward, leading to a lawsuit. Ultimately, the civilian won the case and received 50 million won, approximately 36,232 at current rates. Throughout the investigation, numerous controversies arose. Some police officers spread rumors to heighten Shin Chong-w's perceived danger, including claims that he carried a gun. This instilled fear in many rank-and-file officers, particularly those with limited firearms training when confronting him. There were even rumors that some officers recognized Shin Chong-won, but were too afraid to arrest him. Finally, on July 16, 1999, an event brought his run to an end. That day, a plumber called the police after spotting Shin Chong-won in an apartment. The plumber, a former military intelligence officer with a keen eye for observation, had been hired to fix a pipe. While working, he sensed something was off. In the apartment, clearly occupied by a couple, there were no shared photos on display. The male resident kept his cap on indoors, pulled low over his face, and avoided much interaction with the plumber. The plumber grew suspicious, believing the man resembled the notorious fugitive Shin Chong-won, often featured on television. To confirm his suspicions, the plumber returned to the apartment under the pretense of having forgotten a tool. Taking a closer look, he then checked the tenant information at a real estate agency and discovered the apartment was registered under a woman's name. In South Korea at the time, a traditionally male-dominated society, it was common for apartments to be registered under a man's name. This led the plumber to suspect the man might indeed be the wanted fugitive, Shin Chong-won. After receiving the tip, the police immediately took action, vowing to apprehend Shin Chong-won and bring him to justice. A team was dispatched to the provided address. When they knocked on the apartment door and asked if the man inside was Shin Chong-won, he didn't resist and admitted his identity. The operation was a success, capturing Shin Chong-won after 97 days on the run. When asked about his feelings, Shin Chong-won simply smiled and said he felt very relieved. On the day of his arrest, he was wearing a vibrant floral shirt from the brand Mason, which immediately drew attention and became a trendy fashion item at the time. Shin Chong-won had always been cautious, but this time his capture stemmed from an unexpected lapse. Recently, he had been preparing for marriage, but got into a financial dispute with his girlfriend, which left him in a foul mood and momentarily distracted. This lapse allowed the plumber to spot him. The plumber, who identified Shin Chong-won, was later granted honorary police status. For a time, Shin Chong-won was dubbed a modern-day Hong Gil-dong, or South Korea's Robin Hood. Many believed his acts of stealing from the rich to help the poor embodied justice. Some citizens even wrote signed petitions pleading for leniency, hoping the court would grant him a lighter sentence, a phenomenon unprecedented in South Korean society. However, the court saw it differently. Shin Chong-won had committed crimes and had to face the law's consequences. Despite his charitable acts, they did not warrant clemency. The court upheld his original life sentence and added an additional 22 years and 6 months in prison. Many South Koreans felt the sentence was excessively harsh and unfair, viewing it as a means of venting frustration and exacting revenge rather than upholding justice. They argued the punishment lacked compassion and was merely a response to the embarrassment Shin Chong-won had caused the police. Conversely, others believed he deserved the sentence, arguing that his actions broke the law and had negative societal impacts. In a report, Shin Chong-won exposed various misconducts by South Korean police, including bribery and allegations that an officer had assaulted one of his girlfriends. According to media reports, around 50 officers were disciplined for inefficiency, while approximately 20 others faced trials for suspected corruption and misconduct. At this point, it's impossible to overlook Shin Chong-w's efforts to better himself. Having only completed elementary school, he pursued education during his first imprisonment, passing exams to earn a high school diploma. After his second arrest and imprisonment, he became a model prisoner, demonstrating positive changes in his behavior and mindset. 5 years later, in 2004, Shin Chong-won completed high school and went on to study law and psychology. He hoped that by studying law, he could protect his legal rights, and through psychology, he could help others struggling with mental health issues. In 2009, a decade after his second imprisonment, Shin Chong-won sued the prison. Because the facility prohibited him from sending letters, he researched relevant laws and took the prison to court, demanding 3 million won, approximately $2,174 at current rates, in compensation. A year later, a journalist requested to interview him, but due to his special status, the request was denied. Shin Chong-won filed another lawsuit, ultimately winning 1 million won, about $725 USD in compensation. While in prison, Shin Chong-won wrote an autobiography. Upon its release, the book once again captured public attention. It offered a glimpse into his complex inner world. His writing style was compelling with heartfelt prose. In one passage, he wrote, "To capture me, they even deployed the military and spent a fortune. Someone like me might not have ended up this way. In elementary school, if a teacher had gently patted my head and told me I was a good kid, I might not have reached this point. In 5th grade, my teacher shouted at me, 'This kid didn't bring money to school. Get out.' That was when the seed of evil was planted in my mind." At the end of his autobiography, Shin Chong-won called for more compassion toward troubled so they wouldn't follow the same path and become criminals like him. His story truly captured widespread attention, prompting reflection on the deeper issues behind a troubled young man's journey. In August 2011, 12 years after his second imprisonment, Shin Chong-won attempted to take his own life. He was saved at the brink of death, but suffered brain damage. Many speculated that the reason for his attempt was the death of his father in July of that year. Though his father was not a good man, he was still his father. On a May evening in 2023, around 8 p.m., Shin Chong-won, then 56, made a second attempt to end his life. During a routine check, prison staff found him unconscious after hanging himself in his cell. He was rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment. 2 days later, South Korea's Ministry of Health reported that Shin Chong-won's condition had stabilized and he no longer needed a ventilator. Shin Chong-won's life story has been adapted into comics and films. Yet, public opinion about him remains divisive. Some sympathize with his tragic childhood, viewing him as a modern-day ain't he thief. Others completely reject this perspective, particularly a police spokesperson who publicly stated that most South Korean media do not see Shin Chong-won as a noble thief, but as a true criminal. Shin Chong-won committed numerous thefts and other crimes while on the run, sparking debates and drawing significant attention. His life has touched the hearts of many ordinary people, from his difficult childhood to the grueling experiences of his prison escapes. This has prompted reflection and discussion on issues like family dynamics for troubled youth, education, prison management, police efficiency, and most critically, why a criminal garnered so many pleas for leniency. In his autobiography, Shin Chong expressed deep remorse, emphasizing that the law is a moral boundary, and anyone who crosses it must pay a price. Today, he remains in prison, unable to see the blue sky outside, confined to facing the cold walls of his cell each day. Yet Shin Chong-won has something most ordinary people do not, a legendary life. Story 2. In 1969, the United States was rocked by two shocking cases. 3. Teenage girls vanished mysteriously right in front of their homes. The scenes showed no signs of a struggle or altercation. Despite thorough investigations, the police found no leads. The search dragged on for years. Yet, the identity of the perpetrator remained a mystery. It wasn't until a 15-year-old girl suddenly reappeared that the shadowy culprit was finally brought into the light of day. So, what exactly happened that year? Sofia Silva, a 16-year-old, was a well-behaved and obedient girl. After returning home from school, she would immediately sit down to do her homework. The neighborhood where Sofia lived was known for its safety. So, many kids often studied outside on their front porches. Sofia was no exception. Her older sister, Pam, 5 years her senior, preferred to study indoors. At the time, their parents were still at work. This routine played out daily with nothing seemingly out of the ordinary. But that day, something unexpected happened. After studying inside for a while, Pam felt tired and decided to step outside to chat with her sister and take a break. But as soon as she walked out the door, she was stunned to find Sofia gone. On the chair, there was only a half-empty can of grape soda and a few school books. Pam immediately called out for her sister around the area, but there was no response. A sense of unease crept in. Knowing Sofia well, Pam was certain that if her sister had to leave for any reason, she would have told her first. For Sofia to disappear so silently with no signs of a struggle or disturbance in the front yard was deeply unusual. Pam quickly alerted their parents. Rushing home, Sofia's parents fanned out across the neighborhood to search while also calling her friends, but everyone said they hadn't seen Sofia since school ended. Some began to speculate. Could Sofia at 16 be in a rebellious phase and have run away from home? Her parents, however, dismissed this idea. They knew Sofia as a good girl with excellent grades, and their family was always harmonious and loving. Why would she run away? Unwilling to entertain such thoughts further, they immediately contacted the police. Upon arrival, the police found the scene unusually pristine. No evidence or clues remained. It didn't even resemble a crime scene. Neighbors confirmed they heard no unusual sounds and saw no strangers in the area. With little to go on, the police could only launch an urgent search in the surrounding area to avoid losing any potential leads. Law enforcement quickly mobilized to comb the neighborhood. Joined by Sofia's family and friends, they scoured nearby fields and forests, but found nothing suspicious. In the weeks that followed, missing person flyers were posted in local shopping centers, then spread to nearby towns and eventually blanketed the entire United States. Yet, despite this massive search effort, no leads emerged. As time ticked by, the hope of finding Sofia alive grew slimmer. Then, as many had feared, over a month after her disappearance, a worker at a nearby farm stumbled upon an unusual blue blanket while passing through a desolate swamp. A foul, pungent odor emanated from it. Sofia's disappearance had already become a sensational event in the area, so the worker promptly notified the police. When authorities arrived and opened and found Sofia inside, the area where Sofia's family lived had long been known for its peace and safety. But now the abduction and brutal murder of a teenage girl right in front of her home sent the community into a state of utter panic. Everyone was gripped by fear, desperate for the police to catch the culprit and restore calm. Under intense public pressure, the police soon identified a suspect, a 44-year-old man named Carl Rowe. Carl had long been on law enforcement's radar due to his extensive criminal history. Not only had he been arrested for breaking into homes and committing serious traffic violations, but he also had a record of harassment and public indecency, clear signs of a dangerous, deviant personality. Some local residents reported seeing Carl speaking with Sophia prior to her disappearance. Based on this information, the police searched Carl's residence and personal belongings. During the search of his car, they discovered several blue fabric fibers. After sending the fibers to a lab for analysis, the results showed they matched the material of the blanket that had been wrapped around Sophia's body. With this evidence, the police concluded there was reasonable grounds to identify Carl as the perpetrator who killed Sophia. The local community praised the police for solving the case quickly, alleviating the pervasive anxiety that gripped the neighborhood. The area slowly returned to its previous state of calm. As for Carl, he was detained and awaited the court's final verdict in jail. But just when everything seemed to be resolving smoothly, the case took an unexpected turn. Two other girls, Kristen, 15, and Kati Lisk, 12, also vanished right in front of their home, sending shockwaves through the community once again. Upon receiving the report, the police quickly arrived at the scene. But the situation mirrored Sophia's case. No clues, no signs of a struggle, no witnesses. Nearby residents confirmed they heard no unusual noises and saw no suspicious individuals. With no leads, law enforcement launched another large-scale search to track down the two girls. 5 days later, the police found Kristen and Kati's bodies in a river near the crime scene. The striking similarities to Sophia's case were immediately apparent. The same method, the same cause of death, the same disposal technique, and even the same location for concealing the bodies. If this were a copycat crime, the level of detail in the replication would be nearly impossible. Thus, the police were almost certain that the same person was responsible for both cases. However, the man previously identified as the culprit, Carl, was still in custody awaiting trial. This development left the police in a deeply perplexing position. The emergence of this new case made it clear that Carl was innocent. Under public pressure and a duty to the truth, the police were forced to reopen Sophia's case and review the entire investigation. In doing so, they uncovered a grave error. The lab's earlier conclusion that the blue fibers in Carl's car matched the blanket around Sophia was completely wrong. In reality, the two materials only appeared similar on the surface. They were not identical in physical or chemical composition. It was then that the police recalled Carl's adamant claim, "I've been framed." His plea of innocence turned out to be entirely justified. The police immediately dropped all charges against Carl and officially relaunched the investigation to find the real perpetrator. In this new investigation, they successfully extracted DNA from the victims' bodies, noting the killer's sophistication, leaving no traces at the crime scenes. The police suspected this was the work of a seasoned criminal, likely with a prior record. They began comparing the DNA sample to profiles of individuals with criminal records in the national database. However, with 400,000 samples. To test, they still found no match. Furthermore, the national DNA database contained no record of the suspect. Facing a dead end, the police offered a $150,000 reward, a substantial sum at the time, to encourage the public to provide valuable information. While the enticing reward drew many tipsters, unfortunately, all leads turned out to be false or useless, offering no help to the investigation. The case stretched on for years with no progress. The cases of Sophia, Kristen, and Katie officially went cold, becoming unresolved mysteries in the region. Time passed relentlessly. And by 2002, 6 years after the first case, a surprising breakthrough emerged. In the town of Lexington, South Carolina, 15-year-old Cara Robinson was playing with her best friend Heather at her home. Both girls loved outdoor activities, and that day they planned to relax by a nearby lake. Before leaving, Heather called her mother to ask if there was anything she needed to do beforehand. Hearing that her daughter was going to the lake, a common activity in the area, Heather's mother felt at ease. She only reminded Heather to water the plants in the front yard before heading out. While Heather went to shower and get ready, Cara offered to water the plants for her. As she watered the plants, Cara noticed an unfamiliar car driving by the house. At first, she didn't think much of it, but when the car turned around and came back, a sense of unease crept in. A strange man stepped out of the vehicle. He was neatly dressed, fairly good-looking, and holding a stack of magazines. He approached Cara, seemingly wanting to ask her something. As Cara reached out to take a magazine, the man suddenly pulled a handgun from beneath the stack, pressed it against her throat, and coldly ordered her not to resist, threatening to shoot if she did. Faced with this dangerous situation, Cara realized the man was not only strong, but armed. She had no chance to fight back. To preserve her life, she complied with his demands. The abductor forced Cara into a plastic storage bin in the trunk of his car and quickly drove away from the scene. The entire ordeal unfolded in complete silence with no struggle or noise. Meanwhile, Heather, still in the shower, had no idea what had happened. When she finished and stepped outside, she found only the watering hose lying on the ground. Cara was nowhere to be seen. Since no abductions like this had ever occurred in the area, Heather didn't immediately suspect foul play. She assumed Carrera had left suddenly for an urgent matter without time to leave a message. But the reality was far grimmer. Carrera was trapped in the plastic bin in the back of a stranger's car, being taken to an unknown location. Astonishingly, the 15-year-old didn't cry or panic. Instead, she remained remarkably calm and composed. Even in the darkness of the trunk, Cara began to focus, analyzing her situation and devising a plan to escape her captor. She understood that her best chance of survival was to gather as much information as possible about the abductor and her surroundings. Trapped in the pitch-black bin, she relied on her hearing to observe her environment. She noted every time the car stopped, every turn it made, and the sounds of the world outside. After driving for a while, the man stopped the car. Cara felt the bin being pulled out of the trunk. She heard bustling noises around her, perhaps a public area with people passing by. Then she heard the bin being dragged across a cement surface, followed by a distinct thud as the surface beneath her seemed to change, likely to a wooden floor. Kara deduced that the thud was the sound of the bin being dragged over a threshold, indicating she had been brought into a house. The door slammed shut behind her, confirming her suspicion. After a few moments of silence, the man opened the lid of the bin, his voice calm, showing no signs of anger or haste. Kara pretended to be submissive and cooperative, knowing that her chance to escape would only come once she was unbound. When the abductor untied her, Carrera maintained a humble and gentle demeanor, showing no signs of resistance or intent to flee. Seeing her apparent compliance, the man began to lower his guard. Seizing the opportunity, Carrera initiated a conversation with him. Kara carefully engaged the man in conversation to gather information while subtly reassuring him that she had no intention of escaping, playing the role of a well-behaved child. She understood that by making him feel safe, she could by time learn more about him and her surroundings and find a way to escape. With a rare clarity and courage for a 15-year-old, Kara was slowly turning a dire situation into a chance for survival. What surprised her, however, was how this stranger seemed oddly friendly, his tone gentle and polite, far from the image of a ruthless criminal she had imagined. Yet, he was extremely cautious. During their conversation, he repeatedly asked Carrera for personal details, her home address, full name, her parents' names, even her boyfriend's name, and he meticulously recorded everything in a notebook. Kara, in turn, seized the opportunity to cleverly ask him questions. While the man didn't shy away from talking, he was tight-lipped about critical details like his real name or address, revealing nothing of substance. Later, Kara pretended to stroll around the house and offered to help clean up, but in reality, she was secretly observing, searching for any clues about his identity or location. Her persistence paid off. While rummaging near the refrigerator, she found a card with his dentist's name and another name that might belong to his personal doctor. She also recalled that the plastic bin she'd been trapped in had a serial number. And in the bathroom, she spotted a comb with several long red hairs. Even more telling, Kara noticed a few military photos on display featuring the man, indicating he had once been a serviceman. She carefully memorized all these details, hoping they could one day serve as evidence to expose his crimes. But her greatest fear soon became reality. The abductor began showing signs of intent to assault her. Typically, abductions of young girls have one of two motives: money or sexual intent. Since he hadn't demanded a ransom, Kara realized she was about to be violated. Though filled with rage and anguish, Carrera didn't resist. She knew that to survive, she had to endure. After committing his depraved act, the perpetrator shifted to psychological manipulation. He turned on the TV and said, "Let's see if you're on the news. If no one's looking for you, it means no one cares about you." In reality, Kara had only been missing for about 8 hours. Hardly enough time for her disappearance to make the news. He continued his mental assault. "If you go to the police now, everyone will know you've been violated. Do you think you'll ever be able to face anyone again after that?" He used these words to shame Kara, hoping to crush her spirit and ensure her silence, but he underestimated her. Despite being just 15, Kara possessed an unyielding will and a fierce fighting spirit. She refused to break as he hoped. In her mind, a plan to escape and bring him to justice was taking shape. Unbeknownst to her captor, Carrera still held on to hope. He went on, "You've done well so far. I need to make a phone call now to make sure you don't escape. I'll put you back in the plastic bin. If you promise not to scream, I won't gag you." Kara quickly agreed, assuring him she wouldn't make a sound. Soon after, she was locked back in the bin. But moments later, she began struggling to breathe, thrashing in distress. Noticing her agitation, the abductor opened the lid and asked, "What's wrong?" Kara replied, "I can't breathe." He responded coldly, "As long as you stay quiet, I won't close the lid." Kara nodded swiftly and breathed lightly. Maintaining her silence, he resumed his phone call. And though Carrera could only hear faintly, she discerned he was speaking to his wife. But the details of the conversation were unclear. That evening, still fearing she might escape, he tightened her confinement. He tied both of her hands and her right leg to the bed, leaving only her left leg free to move. That night, Kara couldn't sleep. Her mind was a storm of fear and tension, yet also brimming with determination. As dawn approached, her captor was still fast asleep. Kara knew this was her chance. Using her teeth, she carefully and quietly unfastened the restraints on her hands, avoiding any noise. After freeing her hands, she untied her leg, then skillfully gathered her belongings and moved toward the living room. She remembered a pile of items near the door. If she opened it carelessly, the noise might wake him, but this was her only opportunity, and she couldn't let it slip. Kara flung the door open and bolted outside, her heart pounding with hope and resolve. She found herself in a parking lot. Scanning her surroundings, she knew that if she could find someone, she'd be saved. Fortunately, a car appeared. Carrera summoned all her strength, sprinting toward it and blocking its path. She desperately pleaded with the driver, explaining she had been abducted, and showed him the scars and restraints on her wrists. Inside the car were two men, the driver and a passenger, who were incredibly kind and immediately took her to the nearest police station. At the station, Kara recounted her ordeal to the officer on duty. However, the officer was skeptical and didn't believe her story at first. It wasn't until Kara showed him the marks from the restraints on her wrists that he finally took her seriously. The police then called Carrera's mother, informing her, "Your daughter has been found, but she can't come home just yet. Kara needs to lead us to the abductor's residence so we can apprehend him immediately." So, despite having just escaped the harrowing ordeal, Kara had to guide the police back to the hell she had fled. Though she remembered the general route, the area was filled with apartment complexes, all with identical architecture. Having fled in a panic, she couldn't recall exactly which apartment belonged to her captor. Still, Kara retained critical details about the abductor, the name of his doctor, the card from the fridge, the serial number on the plastic bin, and the long red hairs on the comb in the bathroom. The police located the apartment complex manager responsible for the area where the abductor lived. After Carrera provided these key details, the manager quickly directed the police to the right location. Since long red hair was uncommon in the area, the manager recalled a couple living in one of the apartments, the wife having long red hair. When the police arrived to apprehend the suspect, they found the apartment empty. Likely the sound of Carrera opening the door during her escape had woken him, and realizing she might have fled and alerted the police, he fled in a hurry. Though he escaped, his apartment remained. After further investigation, the police identified the suspect as Richard Mark Evenitz, a 38-year-old man. His name was completely unknown to local law enforcement. No prior record placed him on their radar. Could he have been an upstanding citizen? The police obtained a search warrant and meticulously examined Richard's apartment. The findings matched Carrera's description perfectly, but a startling discovery emerged. Among Richard's belongings, they found newspapers from Virginia with a bold headline: "Bodies of 16-year-old Sophia, 15-year-old Kristen, and 12-year-old Katie found." The police began to see a connection between Richard and the earlier cases. He wasn't an unknown figure. He might be a serial offender. Investigators started digging deeper into Richard Evenitz, a man who may have been responsible for cases they thought were closed. Would Richard be caught? And could the old cases finally be solved? The police suspected that the newspapers Richard kept might be trophies of his crimes. Additionally, the stealthy way he abducted Carrera, silently leaving no chance for resistance, suggested a method he had perfected over time. Moreover, Carrera's age was close to that of the previous victims, further supporting the theory that Richard was behind the earlier Virginia murders as well. The evidence room yielded even more crucial findings from Richard's apartment. A pair of fuzzy handcuffs was discovered, and forensic testing revealed that the fibers on these cuffs perfectly matched those found on the bodies of the 3 girls from the earlier cases. This was a pivotal piece of evidence proving Richard's direct link to those crimes. Another shocking discovery was the presence of fingerprints belonging to Christine, a 15-year-old who had vanished over 5 years earlier, found in Richard's car. Even more baffling, the fingerprints remained intact after such a long time, indicating that Richard was not only a perpetrator, but also highly methodical in covering his tracks. Carrera, though a survivor, wasn't surprised to learn that Richard might have committed other crimes. She recalled how professionally and calmly he had abducted her, clearly not his first time. Despite the mounting evidence, Richard had fled before the police could arrest him, leaving no trace behind. The police tracked down his wife and mother, who were vacationing at Disneyland, and informed them of the shocking truth. Both women were in disbelief. Richard, to them, had always been an honest and kind man, incapable of such atrocities. Once again, Richard had vanished without a trace. But the police, armed with scientific evidence and Carrera's testimony, were not about to give up. The hunt for Richard was not just a legal pursuit, but a tense battle of wits between the criminal and law enforcement. Richard's sister, however, showed no surprise during her police questioning, which caught their attention. It seemed she knew something significant that she had kept hidden for years. After multiple interrogations, she finally broke her silence and revealed everything about Richard's actions. The police acted swiftly, dispatching a team to apprehend him. But when they arrived at a cheap motel, Richard sensed the danger and fled in his car. A relentless police chase ensued, lasting hours. In the end, when the pursuit reached Florida, Richard realizing he had no escape, took his own life rather than face justice. The police concluded their hunt with Richard's tragic end. A grim conclusion for the criminal, but also a form of closure for his victims. Richard Evenitz was born in Columbia, South Carolina, the eldest of 3 siblings. His parents divorced when he was young. Reports describe his father as an abusive alcoholic who frequently beat his children. One of Richard's most haunting memories was at age 6 when his father attacked a beloved pet dog and even threatened Richard's life. These experiences left deep scars, likely steering him toward a path of crime. Though a calculated and cold-blooded offender, Richard's cruelty couldn't escape the light of justice in the end. Richard graduated high and at 17 became a manager at Jiffy Lube. However, he often neglected his work, associating with unsavory characters. Concerned for his future, his parents hoped the military's strict discipline would reform him. Following their arrangement, Richard joined the military, serving as a sonar technician and earning a Good Conduct Medal. But later, he committed an indecent act in front of a 15-year-old girl, though he wasn't classified as a sex offender. At 25, still in the military, he married 17-year-old Bonnie Gower. After their marriage, they settled in Virginia, where Richard spent $125,970 on a new house. But just 5 months later, their marriage ended. Bonnie had met a man online in California, fell in love, and left to pursue that relationship. When she returned, she sought a divorce from Richard. Bonnie's departure to California coincided with Richard's abduction of Sophia, highlighting the profound impact the divorce had on him. Later at 36, Richard met his second wife, 17-year-old Crowley. Typically, a serial offender doesn't stop after one crime, but Richard was different. After this marriage, he ceased his criminal activities. Experts later discovered that Richard had certain deviant preferences, such as shaving his wife's body hair. It's possible that because his wife indulged these desires, Richard led a relatively stable life from 1988 to 1995 and again from 1997 to 2001. Another notable pattern was Richard's abnormal fixation on young girls. His victims were all very young, and both of his wives were teenagers when he married them. This likely stemmed from deep-seated psychological distortions. His wife also revealed to the police that Richard wanted her to dress in a cute way like a young girl because he was drawn to younger women. Experts believe that as his wife matured, Richard likely lost interest, becoming irritable and restless, ultimately seeking out younger girls and resuming his criminal behavior. Richard was an exceptionally discreet predator. After committing 2 consecutive crimes, he went silent for long periods, and even his wife didn't suspect him. The police initially found no evidence tying him to the crimes, earning him the moniker the Silent Predator. Without Carrera's intelligence and bravery, Richard might have evaded justice entirely. Story 3. On Friday, July 21, 2023, a shocking piece of news broke through the sweltering summer heat. The renowned Chinese-American forensic scientist, Dr. Henry Lee, was exposed in a high-profile case. In a retrial, a judge ruled that he must be held accountable for fabricating evidence. The Associated Press, citing the Hartford Courant, reported that U.S. District Judge Victor Baldwin determined Dr. Henry Lee had falsified evidence in a murder case he handled nearly 40 years ago, resulting in 2 innocent men from Connecticut serving 30 years in prison. As soon as the news surfaced, both Chinese and English language media spanning traditional outlets and social media accounts erupted with sensational headlines like "Henry Lee caught fabricating evidence." "Henry Lee, at 84 sees his lifelong reputation crumble," and "Henry Lee's fake evidence robbed 2 young men of their lives." Some social media users in the US even launched a petition calling for a review of every case Dr. Henry Lee had worked on over the past few decades to determine if there were other wrongful convictions. In an instant, 84-year-old Dr. Henry Lee seemed to face condemnation from the entire world. Could a single bath towel really destroy the legacy of a lifetime? What case was Dr. Lee involved in? How was this case reopened? And what role did he play in it? Let's revisit the court records from when the defendants were exonerated years ago, as well as the legal filings against the Connecticut State Police and government. Drawing on the National Registry of Exonerations, a database established by the University of Michigan that catalogs every successfully overturned wrongful conviction in the U.S. since 1989. Today's video will answer all these questions. Let's start with the murder case from 38 years ago. On December 2, 1985, the last day of the Thanksgiving holiday weekend in the U.S., a deadly robbery occurred at a home in the small town of New Milford, Connecticut. The victim was Everett Carr, a 65-year-old retired truck driver. He was stabbed 27 times, his head struck repeatedly, and he ultimately died in the hallway connecting the living room to the kitchen on the first floor. 2 of the stab wounds pierced his aorta, causing blood to splatter across nearby walls and the ceiling, creating a horrific crime scene. The person who reported the crime was Diana, the victim's daughter, who lived with him. She stated that the previous evening she had gone out on a date with her boyfriend. Before leaving, she heard her father coughing from a cold in the bedroom next door. But when she returned early the next morning, she found him lying motionless in a pool of blood. According to Diana, a few items were missing from the house: an old video recorder, some clothing, inexpensive jewelry, and a few rolls of coins. The total value of these items was just over $100. The police classified the incident as a robbery homicide. At the time, New Milford's population was under 4,000 and its police force was limited. The town had long enjoyed good public safety and many officers and forensic experts had never encountered a murder case. As a result, they sought assistance from the Connecticut State Police. However, unlike today's collaborative investigations in the 1980s, such joint cases were typically led by local police. In other words, the state police personnel sent to assist were only responsible for tasks like collecting and testing initial evidence, while critical steps such as photographing the scene and documenting findings were handled by New Milford's detective team. At the time, Dr. Henry Lee held the position of director of the Connecticut State Forensic Laboratory and attended the scene as a state police consultant. The victim had lost 90% of his blood, leaving the crime scene nearly impossible to navigate without stepping in it. The investigation team had to construct a temporary wooden ramp to access the body and collect evidence without disturbing the scene. They found a blood-stained knife sheath under the victim's body, but no murder weapon. On the first floor near the entrance, they discovered for partial bloody footprints different in size from the victims, likely belonging to the perpetrator. Scattered blood stains were also found in an upstairs bedroom, primarily on a nightstand and a cigar box placed on it. The team collected over 40 fingerprints from the house, none matching the victim or his daughter. These could belong to the perpetrator or to others who had interacted with the family. Beyond these findings, no other traces of the perpetrator were found at the scene. Neighbors recalled hearing a loud car around 12:10 a.m. that night. Peering out their window, they saw a vehicle parked in front of the victim's house. About 20 minutes later, the engine roared again, and when they looked out, the car was gone. Based on the timing, this noisy vehicle was likely the perpetrator's, but due to poor nighttime visibility, the neighbor couldn't discern the driver, the car's make, or the number of occupants, adding further challenges to the investigation. With Christmas approaching, news of the robbery murder spread, sparking widespread panic in the small town and neighboring communities. The police faced immense pressure. They held frequent press conferences, promising to ensure a peaceful Christmas for residents. This intense pressure to solve the case quickly led the police to take some astonishing measures. The investigation began with a focus on theft, targeting known petty thieves and fences with prior records. Among them, one thief claimed he had heard about two strangers who had robbed several homes on the same street as the crime. Also, during the Thanksgiving weekend, the car they drove was notoriously loud. The police were intrigued. This matched the neighbor's testimony. It didn't take long for them to track down the two out-of-towners mentioned by the thief, Sean Henning, 17, and Ralph Birch, 18, along with their beat-up, noisy car. Both were quintessential troubled youths, high school dropouts, addicted to various substances, and habitual thieves. When out of money, they stole anything from bicycles to cars, small apartments to large villas. If an opportunity arose, they took it. If not, they made one. This time, Henning had a new girlfriend whose parents lived just outside New Milford. The trio had come to the area after attending a friend's party, planning to spend the night. After dropping off the girlfriend, the two young men got restless. They figured that with many people visiting relatives during the holidays, homes would be perfect for stealing. However, both adamantly denied killing Everett or stealing from his home. Henning, the younger of the two, even vomited on the spot when police showed him photos of the victim's body. But the police weren't ready to let these suspects go, subjecting them to hours-long interrogations. Soon, inconsistencies and contradictions emerged in their statements. For instance, both initially denied ever meeting the victim, but later Henning mentioned that the victim was a large man with a tattoo, which Everett indeed had. Another example, they initially claimed they'd never been inside the crime scene room. But hours later, Burr pointed to a corner of a crime scene photo and asked if it was the bathroom. A detail accurate to the house's layout. Such flawed and contradictory statements only strengthen the police's belief that they were the killers. But these fragmented confessions alone weren't enough to charge them. Moreover, the physical evidence couldn't be linked to either suspect. The over 40 suspicious fingerprints didn't match theirs, and the two bloody footprints differed in size and pattern from their shoes. Most critically, no traces of the victim were found on their bodies, clothes, or car. As mentioned earlier, the crime scene was gruesome. It would have been nearly impossible to avoid blood stains. If they had cleaned themselves and changed clothes to eliminate evidence, their car, overflowing with dirty clothes, random items, leftover food, and trash, should have yielded something. The car itself was stolen, and according to their statements, both were homeless during this period, living and sleeping in that cramped vehicle. The police even found receipts left by the car's previous owner inside. Clearly, the two hadn't cleaned it after stealing it. In such a filthy, chaotic environment, the absence of any blood or hair linked to the victim left the police investigation at a dead end. Yet, despite this, the police refused to abandon these suspects. They arrested Henning and Birch on theft charges and began investigating their associates. First was the girlfriend. She stated that on the night of the crime, all three had attended a friend's party until after midnight, then drove nearly 30 kilometers to drop her off at her parents' house. She didn't know what the two did afterward. This timeline clearly conflicted with the neighbor's account, which placed the car at the crime scene from 12:15 to 12:30 a.m. According to the girlfriend, they were still driving her home at that time, giving the two a solid alibi. But the police interrogated her aggressively. A few hours later, she changed her story, claiming they reached her parents' house by 11:30 p.m., leaving just enough time for the two to drive back to New Milford, rob the house, and kill the victim. Another witness was Henning's grandmother. She proactively told the police that her grandson had confided in her about witnessing a homeowner and his dog being killed while he was stealing from a house. While this statement seemed related to the case, it didn't align with the police's expectations. She said her grandson only saw someone being harmed, not that he committed the act himself. Moreover, the case involved only one victim. No dog was killed. Additionally, the grandmother suffered from Alzheimer's with unreliable memory for dates and specifics. In subsequent police interviews, her answers grew increasingly muddled and contradictory. She even became unsure whether her grandson had told her the story at all. Beyond these two witnesses, one young, one elderly, the police struggled to find any other credible witnesses or valuable physical evidence. Time slipped by, and by the fall of 1987, nearly 2 years after the murder, Henning and Birch were nearing the end of their sentences for unrelated theft charges. Determined not to let these prime suspects slip away, the police went on the offensive. They visited the jail where Henning was held and identified a fellow inmate, Robert Perugini, who had a lengthy criminal record. When Perugini learned he was about to be transferred to an adult prison to continue his sentence, the police offered him an enticing deal. If he could extract information from Henning, any admission related to the murder, whether Henning committed it himself or implicated his friend, Perugini would receive a reduced sentence and avoid the harsher adult facility. Less than a month later, Perugini, now an informant, reported to the police that Henning had confessed to being the killer. In that era, without personal recording or video devices, such claims relied solely on the informant's word. However, aside from Henning's alleged admission, the details Perugini provided were vague. After repeated prompting from the police, he eventually recounted the entire crime in vivid detail. The informant planted with Burr, by contrast, was far less effective. Burr revealed nothing by the time he was released. The police had no choice but to let him go, though they assigned officers to tail him. They soon discovered that after his release, Burr, homeless and jobless, moved in with a friend named Todd, another repeat offender with a long rap sheet. Burr stayed at Todd's for only a few months before Todd was arrested again for theft. When the New Milford Police Department caught wind of this, they swooped in and made Todd an offer. "You're in deep trouble this time. A repeat offense means a harsh sentence from the judge, but you can trade your freedom by testifying against Burr." Todd, unsurprisingly, chose to cooperate, agreeing to testify that Burr confessed to the robbery and murder in exchange for avoiding prosecution himself. It was clear that the New Milford police were hell-bent on closing the case, willing to use any means necessary to pin the crime on Henning and Birch. With these two key witnesses in play in November 1988 and January 1989, the police formally charged both men with murder, scheduling trials for April 1989. By this point, nearly 4 years had passed since the crime. In truth, the case remained riddled with weaknesses, most glaringly, the near-total absence of physical evidence linking either suspect to the murder. Mere testimony without corroboration was unlikely to convince a jury. Enter the infamous bath towel. A piece of evidence that would spark intense controversy. As noted earlier, the crime scene was gruesome with blood splattered across walls and ceilings, yet no traces of blood were found on the suspects. This was an undeniable gap in the case. To address it, the police called in several experts to provide explanations. Among them, the most persuasive was Henry Lee, a bloodstain analysis expert. At trial, the prosecution presented numerous crime scene photos focusing on the distribution of blood on the walls and ceiling. They argued that if the perpetrator and victim were positioned at a specific angle during the attack, the perpetrator could have avoided getting blood on themselves. Henry Lee demonstrated in court, showing that blood splatter hitting an obstacle would leave distinct patterns on the wall, but no such patterns appeared in the crime scene photos. This suggested there was likely nothing between the victim and the wall. When asked if this scenario was possible, Lee responded, "In my opinion, it's probably possible. In reality, common sense dictates that in a blood-soaked crime scene, the odds of a perpetrator keeping their clothes completely clean or slim." The prosecution knew this, so they posited that the perpetrator went upstairs after the crime to shower and change, explaining why no blood was found on their bodies or in their car. The evidence supporting this theory: 2 bath towels in the upstairs bathroom. According to the police report, they found 2 towels there, one allegedly stained with blood. Additionally, a small amount of blood was detected on the edge of the sink. During the trial, the defense demanded that the towel be presented in court for the jury to examine, but the prosecution objected, arguing it was just an ordinary towel, nothing noteworthy, and that Henry Lee's explanation of the test results was sufficient. Ultimately, the judge sided with the prosecution. Lee described the towel as having a faint stain resembling a light red smear. After testing, he said the stain was confirmed as blood. However, due to the small sample size and limited testing methods, it couldn't be determined whether the blood belonged to the victim or the defendants. Lee didn't claim to have personally discovered the blood, only that a chemical test yielded a positive and consistent result, suggesting it was likely blood. Another related piece of evidence was a crime scene photo showing a slight fluorescent reaction on the towel. The photo was taken by a photographer hired by the local police department. Putting aside whether the perpetrator showered and cleaned the scene post-crime, consider the hygiene habits of the two suspects. Their daily lives were chaotic and filthy. How could they suddenly become so meticulous as to shower thoroughly, scrub the bathroom from top to bottom, and leave only a faint blood stain on a towel and sink? Moreover, according to the victim's daughter, her father had a severe cold before his death, coughing heavily. The small blood stains in the bedroom and bathroom could easily have come from his throat or nose due to mucosal bleeding. Even the prosecution admitted the towel evidence was flimsy, acknowledging that the idea of the perpetrator showering and changing at the scene was a bold conjecture based on the crime scene's condition, not backed by any robust physical evidence. But with so little evidence tying the defendants to the crime, the towel was reluctantly introduced as the only tangible link. The prosecution's primary focus remained the witnesses. The girlfriend, grandmother, jailhouse informant, and roommate all testified in turn. The two informants and the roommate were particularly emphatic, claiming both defendants confessed to the robbery and murder. Notably, Henning, perhaps overconfident in his innocence or simply unconcerned, didn't hire a reliable lawyer for his trial. Instead, he casually accepted a court-appointed public defender. This attorney was visibly disengaged in court, overlooking numerous obvious inconsistencies. The outcome was predictable. On April 19, 1989, the first trial concluded, and the jury found Henning guilty of murder. He was sentenced to 50 years in prison. Burr, tried afterward, began to panic and requested a new lawyer. But his new attorney had only 2 months to prepare, and his motion to delay the trial was denied. His last-minute scramble proved futile. He too was convicted of murder and sentenced to 55 years. Both men appealed twice, but their appeals were rejected. They served nearly 20 years in separate prisons. It wasn't until 2008 that they formally petitioned to have their convictions overturned through an organization called the Innocence Project. Founded in 2003, this nonprofit aims to use DNA testing to exonerate the wrongfully convicted and push for reforms to prevent future injustices in the criminal justice system. However, outdated forensic techniques weren't the sole cause of erroneous verdicts. More often, it was unchecked police misconduct during interrogations, using aggressive tactics and inducements to coerce confessions. Such methods almost always succeeded with young, inexperienced suspects. The initial inconsistencies in Henning and Birch's statements about the tattoo in the bathroom stem from these tactics. These confessions were later retracted or revealed to have been coerced. A joint investigation by the U.S. Department of Justice, the U.S. Senate, and the Cardo School of Law found that 70% of wrongful convictions result from mistaken witness identifications during coercive police interrogations. This case perfectly fit the profile: questionable witnesses and weak physical evidence. The Innocence Project tracked down Perry Jenny, Henning's former cellmate, who testified against him. He admitted to lying. Henning never mentioned the murder to him. Perry Jenny had betrayed his friend out of fear of being sent to an adult prison. The crime details he provided were fed to him by the police. The former girlfriend also clarified that she left the friend's party at 12:30 a.m., arriving at her parents' house after 1 a.m. She recalled watching a midnight TV drama Barnaby Jones before going to bed. She only changed her timeline after relentless police questioning and threats to expose her drug use to her parents. Both expressed deep remorse for their cowardice over the past 20 years. Too afraid to confront the mistakes of their youth, they had buried the truth deep inside. It wasn't until the Innocence Project lawyers reached out that they unburdened themselves and spoke honestly. The other two witnesses from the original trial had passed away and could no longer speak. Todd Birch's roommate was killed in a street brawl. Henning's grandmother had died years earlier. As for physical evidence, the crime scene house had changed hands multiple times over 20 years and was demolished for redevelopment, making it impossible to collect new evidence. The only option was to test items preserved in the police evidence room, with the bloodstained towel being the most critical. The results of this retest shocked everyone. Not only was there no DNA evidence linking the defendants to the crime scene, but the towel showed no traces of blood at all. The faint stain, long discolored, was proven to be an inorganic substance. This discovery became the most dramatic turning point in the effort to overturn the case. Henry Lee explained that the towel had been stored in the police evidence room for over 20 years, and biological degradation or alteration was natural. The blood stain, he said, was minimal to begin with and may have dissipated or flaked off during testing. On this point, some forensic experts agreed that biological evidence can indeed degrade over time, especially under poor storage conditions. With a small initial sample, complete disappearance isn't impossible. In a recent public response, Henry Lee produced a copy of the evidence bag label for the towel, which he still possessed. It read, Evidence 16, time 2305, evidence, white towel with pink, green pattern with blood-like stain. Location, sink rack and second floor bathroom. But the defendant's lawyer argued that the issue wasn't evidence collection, but that Lee never tested the towel in the first place. They claimed he based his conclusion that the stain was blood solely on its appearance and prompting, leading to the wrongful convictions. The debate centered on whether Lee performed a TMBB test, also known as a luminal reaction, on the towel stain. The TMB test works by reacting with hemoglobin through a chemical reagent, emitting a blue-purple luminescent glow. It's highly effective for detecting diluted, wiped, or old blood stains. In the 1980s, before DNA technology matured, it was virtually the only method to confirm blood presence. At the original trial, the prosecution presented a photo showing a faint fluorescent reaction on the towel. But due to the limited photo development technology of the time and the use of a projector to display it, re-examining the photo after 20 years failed to clearly confirm the fluorescence. Consequently, the court summoned the photographer who took the crime scene photos. He testified that his job was solely to document evidence, not to recall specifics about the towel. He also didn't witness Lee or his team conducting a TMB test on it. The controversy surrounding this towel began years ago and continues to be debated today. Returning to the case's reopening. After 7 grueling years of investigation and gathering new evidence, in late 2015, the Connecticut Supreme Court announced it would retry the murder case from 30 years prior. The primary reason was that several witnesses from the original trial had provided false testimony under police coercion regarding the infamous towel. And Henry Lee's testimony from years ago, the presiding judge wrote in the June 2016 ruling, Dr. Lee was wrong, but not lying under oath. What does this statement mean? Our interpretation is the judge was saying that Dr. Lee was mistaken. Mistaken here likely refers to deficiencies in preserving the towel test records, not an intentional act of fabricating evidence. This was Judge Saratsaw's ruling in 2016. Henning and Birch were not declared innocent in that trial, so they continued their appeal to the Connecticut Supreme Court. This time, they succeeded. In the July 2023 ruling, U.S. District Judge Victor Baldwin pointed out that Dr. Henry Lee could not provide written documentation or photographic evidence to prove he had conducted the TMB test. In a recent statement, Dr. Lee emphasized, "You cannot claim that because I was at the scene and the documentation was poor, that equates to fabricating evidence. I take full responsibility for everything. You cannot conclude we didn't perform chemical tests just because photos are unclear. Nor can you say we fabricated evidence because the photo records are vague. As a forensic scientist, I only presented my crime scene reconstructions and scientific test results in court. Deciding which evidence to use and what questions to ask witnesses is the responsibility of lawyers and judges. I had no motive or reason to fabricate evidence. The chemical test on the towel didn't directly implicate Birch and Henning in the crime. Additionally, during their trial, the scientific evidence I presented included exculpatory findings such as the absence of blood traces on their bodies and clothing. After the second retrial in July 2019, Burr and Henning were declared not guilty and released in court. By then, the two young men from years past had become middle-aged men in their 50s. As they stepped out of the courthouse, both were in tears, wearing t-shirts emblazoned with the words, "I am innocent. And I didn't do it." Remarkably, during their 30 years in prison, both completed the high school education they had previously abandoned and successfully overcame their addictions. Henning even earned a professional certification in training service dogs, personally raising and training several to assist veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder from wartime experiences. Upon learning that the roommate who falsely accused him had died in a gang altercation, Burr didn't feel the man got what he deserved. Instead, he felt grateful for his own transformation. Had he not turned his life around in prison, he might have met a similar fate on the streets long ago. It's fair to say they truly found light at the end of the tunnel. Yet, they lost 30 of the most formative years of their lives to a wrongful conviction. So, in late 2020, they filed civil lawsuits against the New Milford Police Department, the Connecticut State Police, and Dr. Henry Lee to seek compensation for their damages. In 2022, both men submitted claims for state compensation. In September 2023, the state agreed to settle the lawsuit for $25.2 million US. Split evenly between Henning and Birch. The settlement was approved by the state legislature in 2024. New Milford settled with Henning for $2.4 million US in November 2024. The ruling against Dr. Henry Lee for fabricating evidence was just the first chapter of this massive lawsuit. 8 police officers involved. In the original 1985 investigation also faced criminal charges for obstructing justice and violating civil rights, with their preliminary hearings scheduled for late this year. Henning and Birch expressed, "At this point, it's undeniable that Dr. Henry Lee's stature in the field of forensic science is unparalleled. But science is science and the law is the law, and the law is the ultimate measure." Story 4. On a gloomy afternoon, the sky heavy with foreboding, a vague tip led Phnom Penh police to a desolate outskirts plot. There they stumbled upon freshly churned earth. Beneath a thin layer of dirt lay a young woman's body, naked, brutally battered, barely recognizable. Her death was no accident. Weeks earlier, she'd sent a suspicious sum to her mother, then vanished. Her final message, a desperate, pleading cry for help, echoed into the void. The victim's identity a mystery. Why had she fallen into such dire straits? Who lured this young woman to a foreign land, then snuffed out her life? Was this a personal vendetta? Or had she been in snared by an organized crime machine? The only clue, her frantic plea before disappearing. Would it unravel the truth? The quest for answers began, fraught with dead ends and secrets yet to be cracked. Early 2025, Cambodia spiraled into chaos as compounds. Illegal fortified dormitories run by foreign syndicates proliferated. In hotspots like Preah Sahan, Sihanoukville, and Phnom Penh, abandoned casinos and high-rises morphed into hubs for Chinese-led online scam rings. Young people from China, Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia, and beyond were lured by slick promises of easy jobs and fat paychecks. But upon arrival in this dreamland, they faced a grim reality, forced into underground operations, trapped in barbed wire camps guarded like prisons. Inside these compounds, sophisticated abuse kept the centers in line. Those plotting escape paid with their bodies or never saw home again. The crisis destabilized regional security, leaving locals unnerved by waves of foreigners and cryptic clashes. Amid this turmoil, the disappearance of an 18-year-old girl, later found brutally injured, shook the public. Her tragedy wasn't just personal. It was a siren warning of the ruthless, borderless underworld's grip. On a late afternoon, March 1, 2025, an urgent tip jolted Phnom Penh police into action, dispatching a team to Danker district, a remote fringe of the city. A frantic mother reported her daughter's sudden silence, coupled with a strange call from police claiming the girl was in peril. These patchy, ominous details spurred an immediate search. After hours of scouring, police spotted something odd on a freshly filled vacant lot near a dry lake, disturbed earth hastily covered with wild branches. Nearby, a mudcake shovel lay discarded. Flashlights from the team cast an eerie glow, amplifying the dread, sensing the worst they dug. From the wet sand emerged the first outlines of a human form. Flashlights revealed a face pressed downward, tangled hair and severe wounds. The site was sealed. The case flagged as a major crime demanding swift answers. The scene turned grim. The body was ravaged. No clothes, no ID, buried for days. Bruises and scratches hinted at prolonged agony. Under Cambodia's blistering sun, decomposition blurred her features. Even a veteran investigator couldn't hide shock at the brutality. Nearby tire tracks scored the sand proof she was brought here. Someone had tried to erase all traces. The body was sent to Phnom Penh for autopsy. Identification proved daunting. Her face was too disfigured with no jewelry, ID or personal items. Cambodia's limited fingerprint and DNA databases made matching a needle in a haystack task. Then a breakthrough, a tiny detail. Days earlier, a mother from Kampot province reported her 18-year-old daughter missing under odd circumstances. Then came a cryptic call from Panama Pen police. Her daughter's urgent voice, begging for rescue. Her mother, Tim Sophie, recounted her daughter, Lai Chen Su, an 18-year-old Cambodian of Chinese descent, had recently moved to Phnom Penh for work. Lai Sanu was gentle, quiet, and deeply caring. After that eerie call, Sophie couldn't reach her. A mother's instinct left her restless. That night, she caught a bus from Kampot to Phnom Penh, frantically joining police to trace her daughter. By late evening on March 1, she was summoned to a site where a victim was found to aid identification. The sight broke her. Sophie collapsed sobbing on the barren lot. Though the victim's face was ravaged, she knew it was her daughter. From a faint scar on her hand, a familiar crooked tooth, or simply a mother's unerring bond. Through tears, she confirmed this was her only child. Forensic results later verified it. The ill-fated girl was Lee Hsn Su, 18. From Kong Trash, Kampot province. From a nameless body, police now had their first puzzle piece. Who she was, where she came from, and why she was in Phnom Penh, a city both alien and treacherous. For young dreamers seeking a living far from home. The investigation shifted gears, zeroing in on the victim's life. To unravel the tragedy's secrets. From her family, detectives gleaned vital clues. Fluent in Chinese, Lai's, Su had worked as a translator for a Chinese man since September 2024. The job's nature was murky, sparking her mother's unease. Sophie suspected her daughter was tied to an online gambling company. More troubling, despite her youth, Hsn Su sent home hefty sums far beyond a typical translator's pay. Mid-February 2025, Hsn Su said she'd moved to Phnom Penh, living and working with her boyfriend and a group of Chinese associates. When she vanished, Sophie rushed to the capital's police, knowing her daughter had no other contacts there. Another heart-wrenching clue just a day before disappearing, Hsn Su sent her mother $50, a small sum. Brimming with care. Was it her final glance back at family? Piecing it together, Sophie recalled their last talk. Sun Tzu seemed flustered as if holding back a confession. Only when police called warning her daughter was in grave danger did Sophie grasp that those unheard farewells might have been desperate cries for help. With family in sight, Lika's and Sue's portrait sharpened for investigators. They ruled out a random disappearance. Her ties to a Chinese group in Phnom Penh, plus odd signs before her death, fueled suspicions she may have stumbled onto a secret she shouldn't have. That knowledge likely thrust the young woman into a deadly maelstrom. Lai Shensu, also known as Li Hunt, who was an 18-year-old Cambodian of Chinese descent. Raised in simplicity with a humble dream, a steady job to support her aging mother. Born in Kampot, a southern coastal province, she grew up fatherless, her mother Sophie scraping by with a roadside stall. Knowing her mother's struggles, HSN Su learned Chinese, hoping to land better work among Cambodia's Chinese community. Neighbors and friends described her as kind, affectionate, and fiercely independent. The small, steady sum she sent home from her first jobs proved her devotion. A seeming lifeline came in late 2024. A Chinese man offered her a translator role for his business group in Sihanoukville. The gig sounded easy with a fat paycheck perfect for an inexperienced team, but it was a facade masking a company running online scams. There, HSN Su met Chin Kong Tran Thong, a Chinese man much older, working on the same project. To a naive team, Chin wasn't just her first love. He was her anchor in a strange land. She shared photos with friends beaming beside him, as if she'd found her soulmate. OOP, she joined was a sophisticated scam syndicate, ruthless and far-reaching. HSN Su, perhaps coerced, perhaps too trusting, sank deeper into their world. In her final days in Phnom Penh, anxiety consumed her. During a call home, her voice faltered as if yearning to confess, but held back, torn between fear and a desperate hope for escape. When a faint plea reached police lines, it was too late. HSN Su, the gentle girl with humble dreams, paid the price for a world she didn't belong to. Heartbreakingly, she had no enemies in that foreign land except the trusted circle around her boyfriend. Had she stumbled upon a secret she shouldn't have? That forbidden knowledge likely triggered her tragic end. With clear signs of a calculated act, Cambodian authorities ruled out a random crime. Scene details and family insights pointed to a chilling truth. Hayden Su's killer was no stranger, but someone close, perhaps a co-worker or intimate ally. The careful cover-up suggested intent, unlike the sloppy traces of impulsive attacks. Her prior distress call hinted she sensed danger closing in. Suspicion zeroed in on her boyfriend's Chinese associates. Re-examining the crime scene, investigators fixated on tire tracks etched in the sand. Their depth and axle width suggested a large vehicle, an SUV or pickup. Scouring routes to the wasteland, police reviewed CCTV from the newly opened Aeon Mall 3 and Danker. Sure enough, on February 27 night, a black SUV entered and left the area swiftly. Granny footage revealed an imported vehicle's plate, a hallmark of cars used by Chinese nationals in Cambodia. This bolstered the focus on HSA and Su's group. Parallel efforts targeted foreigners living near Phnom Penh's southern outskirts where Chun Kong and his cohorts resided. Sophie HSN Su's mother noted they rented near RNF City, a hub for Chinese expats notorious for shady dealings. Though HSN Su's phone was missing, telecom data showed repeated calls to Chin Kong. Her last call on February 27 afternoon marked the moment danger struck. Then her signal and those of Chin Kong and another Chinese man vanished. Investigators suspected a grave event unfolded that night. Canvassing RNF City, police struck gold. A local recalled seeing foreign men on February 27 night, hurriedly loading a large shrouded object into a vehicle matching the black SUV from CCTV. Forensic timelines confirmed HSN Su's communications ceased that night. The pieces aligned: she was likely killed and transported to the wasteland to erase evidence. Armed with solid leads, the task force pinpointed 3 suspects: Chen Kong, HSN Su's boyfriend, and 2 Chinese men, including Li Ho. On March 2, a SWAT team stormed their RNF City apartment. Chung Kong and Li Hao, 34, were caught off guard, arrested on the spot. A search of the apartment yielded critical evidence. Beyond electronics, suspected tools for illicit online schemes. Police found dark red stains under the bathroom floor. Tests matched them to HSN Su's blood type. The apartment reeked of bleach, a telltale sign of evidence tampering. Each clue tightened the noose around the truth. At the station, Chung Kong feigned calm. Even crocodile tears. Is she really gone? But faced with ironclad evidence and steely glares, he clammed up. Li Hao, less tied to HSN Su, cracked faster. After hours of grilling, he spilled initial details. Under relentless pressure and mounting proof, both Chun and Li Hao broke. They confessed the chilling truth. His and Su death was no impulse, but a premeditated plot by their group. She glimpsed too much of their illegal operations. When she hinted at leaving and reporting them, she became a threat. She said she'd go to the police if we didn't let her go. Unconfessed. That's when Yang ordered us to handle her before she caused trouble. Yang Kaizan, 26, emerged as the ring leader. Chun and Li claimed he orchestrated the hit. That night, Yang directed his underlings to execute the plan. After the deed, HSN Su was dumped in the wasteland to cover their tracks. But by the time Chun and Li were nabbed, Yang had slipped away. His phone was off, his apartment empty. Initial probes suggested he fled Phnom Penh on March 1, likely crossing into Vietnam illegally. An international manhunt launched. Cambodian police urgently requested Vietnam's cooperation. 2 days later, on March 5 afternoon, Vietnamese scouts nabbed Yang Kaizan near the border. Poised to flee to China, his brief escape ended. That night, he was extradited on a late flight to Panama Pen, whisked straight to the Criminal Bureau. At headquarters, Yang was stone-faced, denying involvement and pinning blame on Chen Kong's overzealous actions. But consistent confessions from his accomplices and damning texts recovered from his phone, direct orders from Yang cornered him. He admitted the plan to eliminate HSN Su was set when she voiced intent to quit and grew wary of their operations. Yang revealed HSN Su witnessed shady dealings, illegal detentions, brutal treatment of forced workers. Her fear and distancing alarmed him. She could expose their syndicate. His solution, a cold-blooded order to deal with her before she unraveled everything. His callous words chilled even seasoned investigators, a scripted, conscienceless act. In just 1 week, from an unidentified body in the wild, Cambodian police unraveled the mystery, exposing a transnational scam ring and apprehending all 3 key suspects. This triumph stemmed from tight coordination between Cambodian and Vietnamese authorities and the victims' families' relentless support. Above all, HSN Su's courage, her final plea for help, lit the path to truth. Though she couldn't save herself, her cry brought justice not just for her, but for countless others trapped in similar criminal webs. From confessions at the station, the suspects' profiles emerged. Not just lone criminals, but cogs in a ruthless, calculated scam empire. Yang Kan-suk case, the mastermind. A Chinese national, he cut his teeth in compounds during 2020 to 2021 when China's tech crime crackdowns pushed Syndicates to Cambodia. Cold-blooded and unflinching Yang rose fast and transnational scam networks. He called the shots, orchestrating everything from staffing to crisis control, even eliminating risks. His life revolved around casinos and Chinese enclaves. No wife, no family, no ties. It was Yang who ordered HSNSUS when she became unsafe to the operation. Chin Kong, 30. Also Chinese, was HSN Su's boyfriend. In Cambodia since 2019. He worked in online casinos, skilled at manipulating others. He met HSN Su when she started as a translator, charming her with sweet promises. But love was a ruse. Behind his kind facade lurked a schemer, ready to exploit his girlfriend for personal gain. When HSN Su sought to leave, he joined the plot to silence her, even helping cover it up. Unrepentant, his confession dripped with icy detachment, as if her death was inevitable. Cambodian records revealed his prior fraud conviction in China before he fled abroad. La Hoa, 34, the eldest. Less tied to HSN Su, he was the group's enforcer. Since 2018, he drifted through scam, dens link security surveillance and dirty work. In this case, he restrained HSN Su and aided Chin in the aftermath. Linked to past kidnappings and extortion, he debated justice by hopping compounds. Surprisingly, he cracked first, spilling details. Perhaps realizing denial was futile and confession his only shot at leniency. All three shared a trade, outlaws dodging their homeland to build a career in the shadows where money reigns supreme. They didn't kill out of rage or impulse but to shield their syndicate from a girl who knew too much. HSN's life, a mere 18 years, was a price they willingly paid. The true horror to them, she wasn't a person who laughed and loved, but a threat to be erased. Beyond Phnom Penh's glittering lights and sleek towers, such stories fester in silence. Where lives are cheap promises or weapons, and a young girl paid with her life for seeing what she shouldn't. This case screams a warning: the brutal cost young dreamers face in the gray zone between hope and hidden traps. From confessions and evidence, the case unfolded like a grim film, each frame steeped in betrayal and tragedy. It began mid-February 2025. Yang Kaishin's group ran a front in Phnom Penh, an ostensible company secretly a hub for transnational scams. Lai Su, just 18, worked as a translator, aiding the Chinese group's communications. Over time, she saw the truth: her job wasn't innocent. She watched colleagues impersonate others online, fleecing foreigners with cunning ruse. Worse, she saw workers lured like her, imprisoned, controlled, beaten for trying to escape. HSN Su begged to quit, desperate to break free. But Chin Kong, her trusted boyfriend, brushed her off, warning her to stay silent. Deep down, HSN knew she had to escape. Signs suggest she quietly contacted a friend outside seeking a way out and kept sensitive evidence, transaction records, victim lists as leverage to protect herself. Her moves didn't escape Yang's watchful eyes. His paranoia honed as a ringleader sensed danger. A sinister plan took shape, not to manage a disgruntled worker, but to snuff out a fleeting spark of defiance. February 27 night, 2025. The scene unfolded like a scripted nightmare. Chun Kong lured his girlfriend to stay late, claiming something to discuss in a sealed room. Once the door shut, escape. Vanished. Yang Chun and Lee emerged, eyes brimming with intent. You betrayed us, didn't you? Yang's accusation thundered, heralding a brutal storm. Before Hees and Su could react, they bound her, trapped by men she'd worked and lived with for months. Chung Kong, once her comfort in weak moments, now tied her with rope, his gaze hollow, devoid of feeling. Her cries for help faded, drowned by Yang's barked orders and her pained whimpers in the locked room. They didn't just want silence, they demanded answers. Had she talked, sent evidence, dared to defy the syndicate? Sobbing, HSN Su begged for mercy, hoping for a shred of compassion from Chin. But she met silence cold. Stares from men who saw her life as a liability to erase. As HSN weakened from pain, Yang seized a final chance. He forced her to call her mother, masking it as a ransom demand. Barely coherent, HNU struggled to stay calm, slipping in a vague plea for police help, her last act to save herself. When it became clear her family couldn't pay and no clean disappearance was possible, Yang made his final call. As the night deepened, the room's dim light faded. In that chilling silence, a young life was snuffed out. No one came. No one stopped them. Before dawn, the trio executed their cover-up cold, swift, ruthless, as they'd done to others before. Forensic findings confirmed Lee HSN died from severe head trauma and asphyxiation, matching the suspect's confessions. She was killed in the very room where she worked, most chilling the trio's callousness. No remorse, no hesitation, they watched her die in silence. Past midnight, disposal began. Chung Kong gathered Hen Sus belongings, phone, wallet, clothes stuffed into a sack. Her body wrapped sloppily in a tarp was barely concealed. Yang Kaishin had pre-selected the site, a desolate lot in Danker, awaiting development, rarely visited even by day. In the dead of night, they hauled her to Yang's SUV, parked in the basement. Unnoticed, they drove to the wasteland by a dried lake. Headlights faintly lit the sandy expanse. They stopped behind tall weeds, digging a shallow grave less than half a meter deep. In the dark, HSNSU's frail body was shoved in. Chung Kong, once her partner in hopeful days, now shoveled dirt over her face. If any conscience lingered, it surely shuddered. Yang steelily as ever scattered dry branches over the fresh earth, signaling departure before dawn. The SUV sped off, leaving a flattened grave as if she'd never existed. Back at the apartment, they scrubbed every trace. Yang planned his exit. On February 28 morning, he told his accomplices, "Act normal. I'm heading to Vietnam. Then we'll figure it out." Chun and Lee played calm, unaware. HSN SU's brief call had sparked a lightning-fast response. Their perfect plan unraveled. February 28 afternoon. Sophie alerted police. March 1 evening, HSN Su was found. March 6. 2 suspects were nabbed. March 5, the mastermind fell after a failed escape. Justice shattered Chen staged missing girlfriend ruse. With airtight evidence and confessions, Cambodia's prosecutors acted fast. On March 7, 2025, Phnom Penh's primary prosecutor's office Charged Yang Kai-chin, Chin Kong, and Li Ho with intentional homicide under Article 200 of Cambodia's Penal Code. It's among the gravest crimes, carrying a maximum of life imprisonment without parole, a stark warning for such heinous acts, even in a nation that abolished the death penalty years ago. The preliminary trial is slated for late 2025. The 3 Chinese defendants will have legal counsel and interpreters, but with documented confessions, their chances of overturning the case are slim. Chun and Li may cooperate for leniency, but the crime severity makes life sentences likely. Yang Kai-chin, the icy ringleader, may blame his underlings or claim a loss of control. Yet, evidence of premeditation from site selection to role assignments is undeniable. No defense can erase such calculated cruelty. For the victim, Lai Xinchu's family will attend the trial as aggrieved parties. Her mother, Tim Sophie, filed for the harshest penalties. Her grief-fueled words will surely pierce the courtroom. Beyond the family, local communities, and human rights groups closely follow the case. M. Samad, director of Cambodia's Human Rights Alliance, declared, "This is an especially cruel crime, defying all moral and human rights values. Cambodia's courts must deliver justice, ensuring no one escapes or claims immunity." He urged broader probes into the group's other crimes, suspecting more hidden atrocities. Notably, China actively cooperated. Though Xinchu was Cambodian, and the case falls under local jurisdiction, China's embassy in Phnom Penh offered condolences and backed strict punishment for its citizens, aiming to deter future crimes. The seamless extradition of Yang Kai-chin across Cambodia, Vietnam, and China signals robust regional efforts against transnational crime, easing public frustration over past unresolved foreign-linked cases. As the trial looms, life sentences seem certain, the highest penalty in Cambodia. For Xinchu's family, it may bring some solace amid unending pain. Yet, no justice can restore the life and future of an 18-year-old. Xinchu, the gentle village girl who sent every penny home, lives on only in photos and her family's aching memories. The murder of the young translator erupted into a global firestorm. Its sheer brutality shocked the world, exposing the festering underbelly of Southeast Asia's so-called easy job, high-e havens. Cambodian and Chinese media splashed it across front pages, branding it stark proof of the peril posed by cross-border scam gangs on Weibo. Millions of enraged comments demanded the Black Triangle's lawless zones like Sihanoukville, where criminals thrive, be razed. Young Chinese shared Xinchu's tale as a gut-wrenching wake-up call to the cost of naivety. 1. Viral post screamed, "Don't let money blind you. Those dream jobs are death traps." Cambodia fury ran deep. Phnom Penh's Chinese community reeled in grief and shame. They rallied, raising funds for Xinchu's funeral and urging authorities to purge their ranks of rogue elements, shielding the reputation of honest Chinese workers. Abroad. Li Xinchu's case didn't end with harsh sentences for her killers. It ripped open searing questions about abductions and labor exploitation in Southeast Asia's sham scam camps. A cruel irony, Xinchu, a Cambodian, fell prey to foreign criminals on her own soil. Was there complicity or at least negligence within local authorities? Amnesty International's June 2025 report sounded alarms over Cambodia's weak response to cyber scam gangs. Whispers persisted. Some local police turned a blind eye or took bribes to shield compounds where victims like Shinchu were caged and tortured. Though unproven, the bitter truth remains. Without this relentless manhunt, Shinchi might have vanished into the void of missing persons cases. From this tragedy, brutal lessons emerged. First, a stark warning to youth and desperate workers chasing dreams. Never trust easy job high-pay lures in foreign lands. Behind legit offers may lurk human trafficking, exploitation, or even execution. Shinchu, an 18-year-old trusting her lover in a translation gig, walked into a criminal den where kindness had no place. Next, the case exposes the peril of isolation in hostile settings. In her final days, Shinchu had no one but her distant mother to cry out to. Had she accessed a safety net, local allies, human rights groups, or an anonymous discipline, disaster might have been averted. A plea of families stay connected, watch for red flags. One timely call can save a life. On a broader scale, the case underscores the vital need for global cooperation against borderless crime. Cambodia, Vietnam, and China's tight coordination ensured the ringleader couldn't flee. This signals a tightening legal net, leaving fewer shadows for criminals to hide. Meanwhile, China faces domestic pressure to crush masterminds, luring workers abroad into illegal schemes. At the upcoming trial, as the three killers stand in prison garb before the bench, none will forget the 18-year-old flower crushed so cruelly. Lai Shinchu's death carried the syndicate's dark secrets, but her unjust end forced truth into the light. If remembered, her tragedy will ring as a clarion call to confront the traps of easy money schemes devouring countless youths far from home. The strongest message isn't just for potential victims, but for those lurking in the dark. No matter where you hide, no matter how you cover your tracks, truth will surface. Justice, even if delayed, will knock. That's the lesson criminals must heed and the sole hope Shinchu leaves for the world. Story 5. They say a man who kills animals for fun is the worst kind of predator, and this man proves it. Somebody that has enough evil inside to harm an animal, has that same level of evil to harm a human. Domenico Claude Giagani was no stranger to violence. With a long history of cruelty, including once slamming a dog's head on a table, he was already a walking red flag. But on the night of March 1, 2023, his darkness reached a level so horrifying that even seasoned investigators were left shaken. New details tonight on what investigators say led up to a man shooting and killing 4 people under one roof, including his daughter. It all started when a 43-year-old Florida man received a video call from his girlfriend's young children at exactly 1:55 in the morning. At first, he was confused. Why would they be awake so late on a school night? Still groggy, he answered the call, only to be met with terrified voices and a chilling claim. All their family members were dead. Without hesitation, he rushed to his girlfriend's home, praying it was some horrible misunderstanding. But nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to find. To truly grasp the horror of what unfolded, we need to go back to where it all began. Cocoa, a small, quiet city in Brevard County, Florida. With a population of just over 19,000, Cocoa is the kind of place where people greet their neighbors by name and life moves at a slower, more peaceful pace. Situated along Florida's famed Space Coast, it's best known for its proximity to the Kennedy Space Center, where rocket launches paint the sky with streaks of light. The city carries a kind of sleepy charm, where families grow old in the same homes they were raised in, and the streets are lined with stories passed down through generations. One such story is a local legend that cocoa earned its name from an elderly African American woman who lived near the Indian River. She would offer hot cocoa to passing sailors, and they in turn would call out "Cocoa, Cocoa" to signal they had arrived and were ready for her warmth. Whether myth or truth, the tale captures the town's long-standing image, one of welcome, safety, and community. Crime here, statistically below average. For decades, cocoa was more associated with rockets and retirees than anything remotely sinister. But all that changed in the early hours of March 1, 2023. At exactly 1:55 in the morning, the tranquility of that sleepy city was shattered. Kevin D., a 43-year-old man, was asleep in his Rock Ledge home when he was jolted awake by the familiar chime of his cell phone. It was a FaceTime call, odd for that hour, and even more unusual when he saw the caller ID. The screen read Kiara Terwilliger, the 15-year-old daughter of his girlfriend Constance Terwilliger. Confused and slightly alarmed, Kevin answered. But it wasn't Kiara on the screen. Instead, he was met by the frightened, teared faces of two young boys, aged 6 and 9. Kiara's younger brothers. Their voices trembled. Through choppy words and panicked breaths, they told Kevin they had woken to the sound of screaming, of loud bangs, of crackling noises that didn't make sense. And then they said the words, "No one should ever have to hear. Everyone is dead." Kevin's heart stopped, shaking, still in disbelief. He threw on clothes and raced out the door. He kept the boys on the line the entire drive as he rushed toward Constance's house in Cocoa, praying it was a mistake, a terrible misunderstanding. But deep down, something told him this was real. When he arrived, he pushed open the front door and stepped straight into a nightmare. There, just inside the living room, lay the lifeless bodies of two adults side by side. Blood pooled around them. Kevin's instincts kicked in. He scooped the boys up, took them outside, and put them safely in his car. That's when he dialed 911. And as you could hear from Kevin's call earlier, the panic in his voice was undeniable, raw, frantic, and full of fear. Within minutes of that call, deputies from the Brevard County Sheriff's Office arrived. On scene, guns drawn, they entered the home and began clearing it room by room. Each step leading them deeper into a nightmare. But the worst was yet to come. In the south bedroom, deputies discovered the most heartbreaking scene of all. 15-year-old Kiara Terwilliger, Constance's only daughter, was found lying in bed. She too had been shot in the head. A pool of blood spread beneath her, staining the mattress where she had likely been sleeping just moments before. Her life was stolen. Kiara was more than just a victim. She was a bright, vibrant teenager full of curiosity and promise. She loved art. She dreamed big. Her death was not just tragic. It was cruel, senseless, and unforgivable. By the time officers had finished clearing the home, the reality had set in. 4 lives had been taken across 3 generations, and only 2 small boys, just 6 and 9 years. old, had survived. The horror of what they had seen would never leave them. As the forensics team continued their work, investigators turned to Kevin for answers. Who would do something like this? Who could be capable of such unimaginable violence? And Kevin, still shaken, gave them the name that would change the direction of the case completely. Domenico Claugiani 24 Grit still got to do the handle part. But well, it's finished. Use the OS flow to finish up the last of the rough spots to pull the oxide out. Kevin explained that Domenico was the biological father of 15-year-old Kier. The two had never been close. In fact, Kier was born from a brief 2-month relationship between Domenico and Constance Tureliger, a relationship Kevin described as toxic and short-lived. According to Kevin, Kiera harbored deep resentment toward her father. He had been absent for most of her life and only recently made an unexpected attempt to reconnect, but Kiera didn't want anything to do with him. Kevin recalled a conversation he had with Constance the night before the murders around 8:30 in the evening. During their talk, Constance mentioned that Domenico had texted Kier earlier that day with a disturbing and aggressive message. Kevin admitted he wasn't fully aware of the back and forth between Kiera and her arrogant father. But it was clear that tensions had been building. Constance, trying to protect her daughter, had insisted that any contact with Domenico remain strictly over the phone, never in person. But what Kevin didn't know at the time, and what investigators would soon uncover, was far more disturbing. The situation took an even darker turn when someone close to Kiera came forward with a chilling allegation. According to this individual, Domenico had recently reached out to Kiera with an inappropriate request. He allegedly asked her to send photos of herself in a bathing suit. For detectives, this was more than just disturbing. It suggested predatory behavior, manipulation, and perhaps an obsessive need to control the daughter he had never truly known. With this new information, homicide investigators officially declared Domenico a person of interest. The case had already stunned the quiet town of Cocoa, but now it was rapidly turning into something far more sinister. Detectives were no longer asking what happened. They were racing to understand why and who exactly Domenico Claugiani really was. By 3:48 in the morning, homicide detectives arrived. They quickly secured a search warrant and began combing through the house for clues. One of the first things they noticed was the front door. It had been kicked in with force. A boot print near the handle and damage to the frame confirmed what they already suspected. The killer had not been let in. He had broken in determined and uninvited. Inside, detectives collected a storm of evidence: spent shell casings, blood samples for DNA testing, and dozens of photographs capturing the carnage. Each room told a part of the story, each body a life stolen in an instant. But as the forensics team worked, another part of the investigation began: building a profile of the man they believed was responsible. Domenico Claugiani was born in July of 1986. He had lived in both New Jersey and Florida, but it was in Florida where his rap sheet truly began to grow. Detectives uncovered a disturbing pattern: aggravated assault, aggravated battery with a deadly weapon, domestic violence, drug possession, and even animal cruelty. In one particularly horrifying incident from 2008, he was accused of snapping a dog's neck. slamming its body into a table, and stabbing another dog to death. These weren't the outbursts of a troubled man. They were the violent acts of someone capable of unimaginable cruelty. There was also the 2012 road rage incident in New Jersey where Domenico reportedly brake-checked and rammed two motorcyclists, then threatened them with a machete. Again and again, his name surfaced in police records tied to violent outbursts, weapons, and intimidation. It was a portrait of escalation. Violence against animals, then strangers, and now his own family. And yet, despite this terrifying history, Domenico remained a free man. Most of his sentences resulted in probation or short stints behind bars. He had somehow slipped through even as his behavior grew darker and more erratic. Detectives didn't stop there. They canvassed the neighborhood around the Terwilliger home, and one investigator noticed a security camera mounted to a neighbor's house. The footage would prove to be one of the biggest breakthroughs in the case. The video captured a silver Dodge pickup truck pulling into the Terwilliger driveway at exactly 1:19 in the morning. The truck's headlights were switched off as it slowly crept forward. 2 minutes later, a loud noise believed to be the door being kicked in was captured on audio. Over the next 71 seconds, 9 gunshots were recorded, then silence. The same truck was later seen backing out and disappearing into the night. That truck was registered to Domenico. With mounting evidence, 2 homicide detectives made their way to Domenico's residence on Matador Drive in Rockledge. It was 11:22 in the morning. Their official purpose was to deliver a death notification to inform him that his daughter Chiara had been found murdered, but their real intent was more strategic: to observe him, to gauge his emotional reaction. Would he be devastated, angry, or eerily calm? Is it because of her boyfriend? Well, we would be hoping that you would be able to help us out with that as well. Would you mind coming down to the precinct and talking with us? Not at this time. I need to process this. This is Dominic. What? They mean to talk to you? You need to go to he's an expert, so he has a little bit of a different process. That's understandable. We're trying to figure out what happened here, sir, and if you come down and talk to us, that will give us a little bit more insight. We're trying to piece together a lot of information. I've got a table. The dogs are up. I could have a cigarette. Like you said, I don't even know where to start with this. Doesn't even seem real. I'm sorry, we've got to go down to them on behalf of the sheriff's office. Jesus, poor condolences. Are you going to go with me? She should be at school. Yeah, she's supposed to be at school right now. I know she had a strep throat, but you could come as well. It would be helpful if you could as well. I really do need someone to come with me. I'm sorry. I have a strep. I'm autistic. __. Would you be willing to come with me? Of course. As much information as we can get. It would be helpful. Our office isn't very far from here. It's right down here on the guest side. Okay. Well, let me we've got to put the dogs down. I've got to get some clothes on. What do you want? Do you want us to come with you? Are we still ___ awake? Well, to the Rockwood's office. You guys are upset and we don't want you driving, so you could each ride with one of us. You just got one of some of the worst news you could ever get, and we don't want to get in your way. I don't even know where to start. I don't even know how to process this. Alright. Well, let me get some clothes on. What the ___ as you can see, detectives were immediately skeptical of Domenico's reaction. His face held a blankness that didn't match the gravity of the news. While he acted somewhat confused, he showed no real emotion, no tears, no collapse under the weight of hearing that his own daughter had been murdered in cold blood. The officers observed a man who appeared to be in disbelief, but not in mourning. Shortly after receiving the news, Domenico and his roommate briefly returned to their house to grab some belongings. What happened inside would shake the investigation wide open. According to the roommate, once the two of them were alone, he turned to Domenico and asked a question that had been hanging heavy in the air. "Did you do this?" Domenico didn't hesitate. He looked at his roommate and calmly responded, "Yes. I shot her 3 times. It's just you and me now. We have to stick together. We'll get through this." It wasn't a confession made in fear or remorse. It was cold, calculated, and disturbingly matter-of-fact. After they left the house, detectives transported Domenico and the roommate to the station, but in separate vehicles. The difference between the two men was stark. In one car sat Domenico, showing no visible distress, no sadness. Instead of asking about his daughter or the investigation, he chose to speak about global warming and the environment, a detached stream of thoughts that made the hair on the back of the officer's neck stand up. In the second car, the roommate was emotional. He couldn't hold back his frustration and grief. And as he sat beside the detective, he began to open up. He shared something deeply disturbing, something he had heard the night before. The murders. Around 11:30 in the evening, Domenico had been in a rage over Chiara not answering his messages or telling him about her doctor's appointment. In that moment of fury, Domenico reportedly said, "I guess I'm just going to have to go over there and kill them all." At the time, the roommate thought it was just another one of Domenico's outbursts. He had a history of violent tantrums, but now looking back, the roommate whispered, "God help me. Maybe I should have known." He also revealed that Domenico was very familiar with firearms and likely used his roommate's own gun in the murders. To support this, he provided detectives with doorbell footage from their home. The video showed Domenico entering his silver Dodge pickup truck holding a handgun. Just 23 minutes before the first shots were fired at the Terrell-Liger residence. The same camera later captured Domenico returning home just 19 minutes after the last gunshot. With mounting evidence, a silent confession, and eyewitness statements, detectives were ready to confront Domenico directly. Inside the interview room, 2 homicide detectives from the Brevard County Sheriff's Office read Domenico his Miranda rights. He waived them without hesitation and agreed to speak. When asked when he last saw Chiara in person, Domenico claimed it was Monday afternoon around 2 o'clock, roughly 35 hours before the shooting. He said Chiara had a doctor's appointment for strep throat, which is why she stayed home from school. He added that their last verbal interaction had been the following day, Tuesday around 3 o'clock, when he called to check on her condition. "That's the only thing that really bothers me," he muttered, referring to the tone of their final conversation. He said he had tried to ask about her symptoms, but Chiara hadn't responded the way he wanted. Then came the most bizarre detail yet. Domenico claimed that around 1:30 in the morning, Chiara had called him while he was sitting on the toilet. He described the moment as odd because Chiara never called him at that hour and he thought maybe she was finally opening up or trying to reconnect. Maybe she was trying something new, he said. When asked if he responded to the call, Domenico said he didn't answer right away, but texted her back afterward. He allegedly wrote, "Hey, sorry I missed your call. Was on the toilet. You're right. It's just a doctor appointment. I'm sorry. See you for sushi later." On top of everything, he described himself as a recluse, saying, "I'm a hermit crab." With a light chuckle that seemed wildly out of place. He claimed to have no friends, no social life, and no interest in anything beyond his work delivering newspapers. According to him, his nights were predictable. He went to bed at 6 o'clock in the evening, woke up around 1 o'clock in the morning, exercised, and then prepared for his paper route. He denied owning any firearms. He insisted that he never left the house unless it was for work and made it clear that no one else had used his silver Dodge pickup truck on the night of the murders. But the detectives listening to him had already begun connecting the dots, and the evidence told a different story. They looked Domenico straight in the eyes and questioned him about inconsistencies. He had claimed not to have gone anywhere that night, yet surveillance footage from his own doorbell cameras showed otherwise. His truck had clearly been captured on video, pulling out of the driveway. When confronted with that footage, Domenico appeared momentarily startled, but quickly brushed it off, saying he must have forgotten. He then offered a vague excuse, claiming he had gone to a man named Jim Harper's house to smoke marijuana and sit by a fire. The detectives asked for Harper's contact information so they could verify the story. Domenico hesitated before saying he didn't have it. That hesitation, that pause was the first crack in his carefully rehearsed facade. The detectives pressed further. The footage didn't just show his truck leaving. It showed him carrying a handgun as he got in. When asked to explain this, Domenico fell silent. His shoulders stiffened, his gaze dropped, and the atmosphere in the room grew heavier by the second. There was no more stalling, no more deflection. Finally, after a long pause, Domenico leaned back and said the words investigators had been expecting. He was done talking and didn't want to continue the interview. It wasn't a confession, but in the minds of the detectives, it was as good as one. It was the kind of silence that speaks louder than words. Shortly afterward, Brevard County Sheriff Wayne Ivey stood before a row of flashing cameras and microphones to address the public. His voice was firm, his expression unwavering as he confirmed what many had feared. Approximately 1 hour prior, deputies had arrested Domenico Claugigani, 36 years old, from Rockledge, Florida. He was charged with 4 counts of premeditated first-degree murder with no bond set as ordered by Judge David Koenig. Sheriff Ivey didn't hold back. He laid out Domenico's violent history, detailing a long string of arrests that painted the picture of a man who had been dangerous for years. As early as 2005, Domenico had been arrested for domestic battery. In 2008, he was charged with multiple counts of animal cruelty. By 2012, he faced charges of aggravated battery with a deadly weapon and aggravated assault. Sheriff Ivy then issued a statement that would resonate far beyond the press conference, that anyone capable of harming animals is more than capable of harming human beings. Folks, I'm going to tell you that this is an extremely violent individual with an extremely violent past dating back as far as 2005, who should have never been on our streets where he could take the lives of this entire family. In 2005, he was arrested for domestic violence and battery. In 2008, he was arrested for multiple counts of cruelty to animals. In 2012, aggravated battery with a deadly weapon and aggravated assault. And I have said this before, that if you are the capacity of a person that you can harm an animal, you will hurt a human being. And this individual is living proof of that statement. As Domenico Claugiani sat in custody waiting to be transported to jail, his mind wasn't on the victims. It wasn't on his daughter or the blood-soaked house he had left behind. Instead, he repeatedly asked officers if he could speak with his roommate just one last time. Eventually, the roommate, who happened to be at the station for questioning, agreed to a monitored conversation. What unfolded on that recorded video would only further cement the chilling nature of Domenico's mindset. The first words out of Domenico's mouth weren't about remorse or grief. They were a question rooted in paranoia and self-preservation. "Did you tell the police anything?" The roommate, calm and honest, answered. "I told the truth." Domenico's voice tightened. "Why?" he demanded. The roommate's response was blunt but powerful. "Because you did something horrible." But that exchange wasn't the end of it. Just 5 days later, from inside the jail, Domenico made a call to the same roommate. This time, his tone was calculated, manipulative. He asked the unthinkable that his roommate take the blame for the murders. Domenico urged him to lie and say he had committed the killings out of love for him. A twisted plea from a man grasping for any possible way to escape the consequences of his actions. He also mentioned plans to pursue an insanity defense, hoping to convince the court that his mind was broken, that he didn't know what he was doing. But the justice system was already moving forward and fast. Weeks later, a grand jury indicted Domenico on 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of armed burglary. The case was officially handed over to State Attorney Phil Archer's office, and the prosecution wasted no time. They announced they would be seeking the maximum punishment under Florida law, the death penalty. Prosecutors believed the evidence was overwhelming for lives were taken in a methodical, premeditated act of violence. Shell casings, surveillance footage, confessions, witnesses, digital footprints, and worst of all, the victims were family. One of them a 15-year-old girl who had once trusted him, even if from a distance. According to Florida law, first-degree murder is a capital felony and the penalties are clear: life in prison without the possibility of parole or death by lethal injection. As of the making of this video, Domenico Claugiani remains behind bars at the Brevard County Jail, facing 4 counts of first-degree premeditated murder and 1 count of armed burglary. Prosecutors are pushing for the death penalty, and the case is still moving through Florida's legal system with no confirmed trial date just yet. A docket-sounding hearing held on March 6, 2025. Confirmed ongoing legal motions, but the road to justice remains long and complex. Domenico's legal team continues to examine evidence and is expected to challenge aspects of the case, possibly through mental health claims. But the evidence, from surveillance footage to damning witness testimony, continues to paint a devastating picture of premeditated violence. And while the legal gears turn, the heartbreaking reality remains. 15-year-old Kiara will never grow up, never graduate high school, never chase her dreams, or discover the woman she could have become. Her life, like the lives of her mother, grandmother, and her mother's partner, was stolen in the most brutal way imaginable, by someone who should have protected her. Whether the ultimate sentence will be life in prison or death by lethal injection, one thing is certain. The community and the world will be watching closely. For now, we wait for justice, for answers, for the voices of the victims to finally be heard in a courtroom. If you've been following this case, we'd love to hear your thoughts. As the rain gently falls and the night grows deeper, thank you for joining me here at Mr. Nightcared. True crime stories remind us of life's mysteries and the importance of staying aware. Even as we seek comfort in the quiet of the night, let the rain carry you to a peaceful sleep. And until we meet again, stay safe, stay curious, and let the night watch over you.